Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, week one, man. Let's go.
We made it.
Round of applause.
We truly made it, man. Despite their best efforts, we survived.
We survived. I am so excited. By the way, we got cold takes last pod. I said, oh yeah, it's going to be great that we're coming out with episodes like in the afternoon and we won't, get necessarily, burned by news that comes out like at night or something like that. And then don't you know the SEC announced a 9-game conference schedule? It's just like
every time.
Every single time. We got cold taked about being cold taked. That's hard to
do. If anything's ever happening, y'all, on the resolution, like if there's like a jury hearing or something, just say, hey, at SDS Pod, just go ahead and record an episode on it, and then that'll get all the conflicts around the world will be ended as soon as we record a podcast.
We should have done a full in-depth breakdown of the Rasul Faison eligibility case. And this would have been resolved so long ago. Now, it finally got resolved this week. The South Carolina running back, the former Utah State transfer, we'll maybe bring him up later in the pod when we talk about that South Carolina-Virginia Tech game. But if we had just talked about this in February, we could have just pushed the NCAA to make a decision.
It would have been over. Yeah, it would have been over with.
Apologies, Rasul. That's on us. We will be better. We have a loaded show. Loaded show. We will talk about the 9-game conference schedule when the SEC settles on the 3 permanent rivalries for these teams. So we'll go more in depth. By now, people have heard enough about that. You kind of know the takeaways and whatnot. But we have week 1 preview, full week 1 preview with the 6 power conference games involving SEC competition. Let's go, man. I was putting this doc together yesterday and just smiling the whole time, ready to go. We have all of that plus lock
McMahon on your shirt, the Bears quarterback. I got little Tigers on my shirt. We're in game mode. We're locked in. I'm ready to do Oklahoma drill with you right now.
I'm ready. I would not personally partake in an Oklahoma drill with you. I think you probably got how much weight you got on me? 70 pounds? 40?
I'm a little bit lighter now. I'm rocking about 210. I think the center of gravity might help you out, man. You might be able to just slam me right quick.
My bad. That was terrible math on my part. Apologies. You do not have 70 pounds on me. Let's get that off the record. Craig, bleep that part. You definitely do not have 70 pounds on me. That was very, very disrespectful. We got 25, 30 pounds on me.
There you go. That's great news right there.
Yeah. Okay, so no Oklahoma drill, but we do have a loaded show. Kevin Clark of ESPN, he's going to join us in a bit to talk a bunch of Miami things. I don't know if you heard, but Catholics versus convicts. I don't think we can call it that anymore, but they are indeed playing a football game week 1 as well. And then we will close with Lad of the Week. But first, just as we've been doing all offseason, got to talk to you guys about Dabble. Football season, daily fantasy. In my opinion, the best place for daily fantasy is all things football, college football, NFL. Dabble is the place to do it. They are making a name for themselves in the DFS space. They have wasted no time doing that. Their social function, second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports making picks. But let's be honest, like you're listening to this because you love football. You should be doing this for college football, NFL. Please do so responsibly. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $10 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. That's SDS2, $10 in bonus cash, courtesy of Dabble. All right, Will, week 1. Gosh, I'm like borderline jittery. I'm so excited. I'm not quite ready to take you on an Oklahoma drill, but I am ready for pretty much anything besides that. So we will go through these. Let's go through these in chronological order. Let's do that. Because actually by the time that we talk on Sunday, South Carolina will have not even played yet, but we're still going to preview that game anyways. So let's start with the one on Friday night. Auburn, 2.5-point favorite against Baylor. The over-under I have for this one is 2 Auburn quarterbacks who will see the field. 2. We'll see. We'll see. Same question that we asked Justin Hokanson. Basically, is it more likely that we see 1 Auburn quarterback or 3 Auburn quarterbacks?
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Buddy, do they? It can't be 3. It just can't be.
I didn't know that about play callers. And yet I've seen 3 quarterbacks in the game. I don't know if I've seen 3 play callers.
I would take the over. If it was over under 2 Auburn play callers, I would definitely take the over on that. And I don't mean any disrespect to Ashton Daniels, Deuce Knight. But if 3 quarterbacks are out there within the flow of a normal football game for Auburn, which what even is that at this point? I don't know. But if this is a non-blowout and there are 3 Auburn quarterbacks that take the field, I'd be terrified if I'm an Auburn fan. This is a huge standalone game for Jackson Arnold, returning to his home state. I don't want to assume that he's fixed if he balls out against a Baylor defense that's actually been more of a liability the last 3 years under Dave Aranda. I know we think Dave Aranda, we think defense, but that's just not the way Baylor has been built in recent memory. And it's not really what fueled their run down the stretch. That pretty much got him off the hot seat.
People forget, like offense, you could be a little Dan Mullen at Florida, have some 3 stars, get them open, great scheme. On defense, if you get pushed around, there's just not much you could do even if you're a great schematic guy like Aranda.
Yeah, they went from playing in that Big 12 championship game and being like, wow, real lockdown defense. All of a sudden you look up and you're kind of like, they got some holes on that side of the ball. And that's why I wouldn't necessarily put this game for Jackson Arnold in how do you like me now territory. I don't think we're there. The Oklahoma game, obviously, that will be a Toby Keith game and not just because of the Oklahoma connection. But this game is huge for him. This game is huge for Hugh Freeze. Of course it is. He is 4-5 in true road games, which is not that bad in the grand scheme of things. That's the same thing as Josh Heupel's 8-10 in true road games so far at Tennessee. Hugh Freeze being 4-5 in these true road games is not a fireable offense, but the combined record of the 4 teams that he beat in these true road games, 14-33. Not great.
Not great.
Can you name the only road win versus a bowl team that Freeze has had so far at Auburn?
Gosh, man, I actually don't. I'm trying to think of what was at home and what was on the road as it was getting me. They didn't beat No, I don't know.
I thought you were circling it. I thought you had a look in your eye like you were going to get this. The Cal game at 23.
Cal. Man,
6-7.
That game happened in the upside down, to be fair. That game could have been a fever. You could have convinced me I dreamed that game happened.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze's favorite road trip was going to Berkeley. He loved it there. He's a big fan of everything involved in that game. And to this point, it is the best road win that he has had at Auburn. We've spent 8 months taking shots at Auburn, outside of a few Saturdays here and there last year. 12 months taking shots at Auburn, and I think they're justified. I really do. I think we have every right to be critical of this program. If you're Hugh Freeze, this is your opportunity to move past that, to show us in a national television game that you have a clue, because this fall camp has not exactly been one that has made everybody think Hugh Freeze has a clue. I understand there are some things to figure out, maybe what that backfield looks like in a post-Jarquez Hunter world. I think Alston's going to end up being kind of the lead back there. That's the way that it plays out. But could be some hierarchy type things that they're trying to figure out. You know what the worst case scenario is, though. Like, you can close your eyes, Will, and just picture worst case scenario for Auburn in this game. What is
the beautiful thing about Hugh Freeze at Auburn? When I close my eyes and picture the worst case scenario, they've done things that I couldn't have pictured. I'll be so honest with you. We talked about some of the Jarquez Hunter usage last year, where it's like, how do you misuse this guy so much? So, and just to like put a bow on this, I know people check in and check out for the season. Both of us were pretty pro the Hugh Freeze hire as a football coach, right? And it's really just kind of disappointment at this point, because I think he's brought in some great athletes. I think that he has some of the dudes and made some of the decisions to win, but it's the personal decisions he's made and talking about some of the play calling decisions and stuff like that. So it's not like we're just Auburn haters on this pod. We just kind of expect better out of them. And I think that's kind of what you're hitting on here, which is that like some of these decisions have just been so puzzling. Talking about our boy Towns Magoo, the backup kicker, like that's something I couldn't have imagined.
He's got a chance to play in this game.
Don't we all?
Alex McPherson, I hope he is okay. I hope he is okay and that he is not still dealing with the injury. Do we call it an injury? We call it an illness that sidelined him last year, the irritable bowel syndrome.
We talked exactly what I'm talking about. In my wildest dreams, I could not have imagined that happening. Couldn't have closed my eyes and seen that one.
I was reading On 3, and this is how deep into the weeds I get with some of this stuff, and I'm reading about the availability of a kicker and who would be able to give it a go if the starting kicker is unavailable, and seeing the name Towns Magoo, I was like, get triggered. I hope Towns has a great life. I really do.
Yeah.
But yikes. This worst case scenario is very clear. It's Hugh Freeze looking befuddled on the sideline, maybe yelling at some people.
All-time befuddler, that Hugh Freeze. A gosh dang it guy, a dadgum.
What are we doing in the most Hugh Freeze way possible? And this is very clear of what it looks like if Auburn is dysfunctional, if Auburn is not living up to these expectations, because this passing game, not really the whole passing game, but these receivers if they're looking disgruntled, that's a bad sign. That's supposed to be the strength of this team, or at least of this offense going into this year. And they should have that advantage on pretty much every field that they step on this year. I don't think that plays out, though. I don't think worst case scenario plays out in week one. I think a Baylor team that's got a decimated backfield entering the season relies a little bit too much on Sawyer Robertson, and maybe a better than it gets credit for Auburn defense is the best unit that steps onto the field on Friday night. And that is kind of what allows Jackson Arnold to settle in. Maybe not a blistering start from him on the road, and we're kind of like, oh boy, he's holding on to the football too long. This is Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold taking the field, but settles in, and the flow of the game ultimately favors Auburn. I think he throws a couple of touchdown passes to two new weapons, Eric Singleton, if he's healthy, Horatio Fields. I think that there could be a slow start that turns into a very promising Auburn finish that makes you feel like, oh, maybe better days really are ahead. I think Auburn wins this game 31-21.
Apologies, guys, if you see me kind of freaking out here on the camera. I was prepared for Atlanta trash day today, but I was not prepared for what appears to be my neighbor getting sod delivered via some type of a medieval forklift device, but we're rocking and rolling here. Anyway, it would be very funny if Auburn becomes one of these teams that we've kind of keyed in on that gets all this buzz for offense, but ends up being a defensive team by the end of the year, right? Florida last year, Tennessee, and like Alabama last year. And so point being, like, we have all this focus on Jackson Arnold, the quarterback, Hugh Freeze, the play callers, the wide receivers, but the defense top to bottom has, I think, shown a little bit more, let's say, consistency, at least what we like about Auburn in terms of players and things like that we could say, point to that. Like, we don't know that Auburn can deliver the ball to the wide receivers. We know the receivers are good, but it would be very funny if they just become the most chill offense that could just mitigate those very, very strange turnovers we saw last year. And they can kind of just run the ball a little bit. And that would be a huge step forward for Jackson Arnold, who came from a team that I still think was a great defense last year and couldn't do that.
What would you do if you were Hugh Freeze to continue this offseason theme of building up the confidence of Jackson Arnold? What would be your mindset going into this one? Would you say, cut it loose, let's get Cam Coleman on a deep ball, let's just get him a go route, and let's just let him sling it and get into the flow of the game? Would you dial up design run looks for him? Would you have bubble screens? Like, what would be your process? Because that's what a lot of people will be keying in on, is what is Hugh Freeze doing, not in fall camp, but in a meaningful live tackle football game, to get his quarterback settled in with his new strengths? What would be your strategy? What would you want to see if you're an Auburn fan, Will?
Yes, and sorry, I wasn't laughing at you. I was just thinking of what theme Auburn has built this offseason. It's a very confusing one, but to that point, I think that Jordan Rodgers kind of explained that a little bit when he came on during media days, which is that when Jackson Arnold has been at his best, he's oddly been kind of an RPO guy. When you think about a five-star quarterback, you think about a guy who comes out there, he's got the look, he's slinging the ball around, Trevor Lawrence-esque. But I think for Arnold, where he's comfortable and where he has been the most successful is kind of falling forward, right? 4 and 5 yards a carry, making the easy read, having some stuff to build on. And I do think that's part of the reason why he chose Auburn, that Hugh Freeze has been known for kind of protecting his quarterbacks, right? He's been known for getting the most out of guys and having these freak wide receivers that can make easy plays. And especially when the defense and the linebackers start to kind of hover on the line of scrimmage, they start to kind of say, he can't shoot in basketball. It's like, oh, we're not going to guard you. You can't shoot. Start getting a little bit of that for Jackson Arnold after he falls forward 4 and 5 yards, and suddenly, boom, Cam Coleman's gone.
That's the nice thing about the situation for Jackson Arnold, which I don't know that it's going to work out, but at the very least, your receiver room is talented enough to where teams shouldn't just be loading the boxes and trusting that single coverage is going to work on Cam Coleman or, Eric Singleton. Hey, you've got a linebacker that's going to end up, across from him in the slot. Like, you should be able to get some advantageous looks that are going to benefit you. And that's maybe the biggest challenge for Hugh Freeze, is getting his quarterback to understand what that is and how to be able to say, like, all right, I'm not just recognizing that, but I'm able to actually execute that and able to pick apart a team on a drive. Because that was, at this time last year, that was the most troubling thing for Jackson Arnold in the first part of the season. What led to his benching in that Tennessee game was he was getting favorable looks, albeit with a decimated offensive line, decimated receiver room. We've talked about that. But you're in favorable spots to where you think your talent should win out. And if you're just not seeing it some of those times, then it doesn't really bode well for when the competition is going to get more difficult. Now, how difficult the competition will be in week one, we'll see how that plays out. Ask me 2 months from now what Baylor turns into. If Baylor's an 8-win team again, 9-win team, all right, that's fine. They're going to stay in the Big 12 competition, the Big 12 title race. Then we can talk about Jackson Arnold and who he is as a player and what that game meant. But for now, take advantage of a defense that was kind of scuffling at a lot of different points and see if you can put your best foot forward and really look like a guy that's taking the next step.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about this scheduling. Baylor's kind of been all over the place over the course of our lives, right? But I think that this could be a perfect opportunity to kind of jump on a team that might get better as the year goes on, right? Like that's kind of been one thing about Baylor is that they have been so up and down that when you look at the end of the year, they might be riding a 4 and 5 game win streak. They may be creeping into that top 25. You go, oh, wow, Auburn confidently beat them to start the year. That actually looks like a quality win. So that's why scheduling out of conference is great. We're starting to see more and more of it with the expanded playoff. And I think this could be a nice little appetizer for Auburn's season. To your point, not predictive of an SEC slate, but enough.
Do you think Auburn wins?
This game is so hard to call, man. I gotta go. I gotta go with them. I think based on especially what I saw at the end of the season. I know bowl games don't count really at this point, but I think that Baylor has been so disorganized.
You watched Baylor get carved up by LSU, and an LSU team that had a lot of opt-outs in that bowl game, and it's very hard for you to envision. Yes, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean they did have Nuss, which is a really big deal. So I can't really hold that against Baylor. But at the same time, I just think, like I said, Aranda's just been so erratic, and I don't really trust him to prepare. Weirdly, Hugh Freeze, it's like it's almost like he's good at preparing, but then he gets the game day and gets too creative. So in a week one situation, I kind of like him more than Aranda. I like the talent on Auburn. So I think it would be very disappointing if Auburn won this game. I won't let him off the hook if I say this should be an appetizer. This should be what feels like an easy setup to Auburn season that won't answer questions if they win. If they lose, that's okay too. They should win this game.
Saturday, noon. Syracuse, number 24, Tennessee. Tennessee's a 14-point favorite. This game will be played in Atlanta. The over-under I have is 18 Tennessee pass attempts. Very specific. That is the fewest amount of passing attempts that Josh Heupel has had in a game during his 7 seasons as a head coach. It was actually the 2021 Vandy game when it was over by halftime. They need to throw the ball a whole lot. I don't think this one will be over by halftime. I'll be stunned if either of these passing attacks look particularly good. That might be the case on a normal day with these teams, considering it's Fran Brown, not necessarily a great year one for his defense at Syracuse, but still I expect better days ahead given where he came from, the Kirby Smart coaching tree, all that. And then Tim Banks leading the other defense who we just now at this point assume Tennessee's defense is going to be up for the challenge. Those are two guys that can very much coach up a secondary and frustrate an opposing quarterback. But now those two guys have 8 months to prepare. Mm-hmm. And even with the questions that are facing both of those units, I would expect them still to have the upper hand in a very extreme way because both of these teams will 2 post-spring quarterback transfers starting. Mm-hmm. Steve, I don't think you're ready for Angeli. Excuse me. Apologies. If you don't know.
It's so sad when I get to say that one again because that's electric.
Who knows? Syracuse in the playoff hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to find a way to sneak that in. Steve Angeli in the Heisman Trophy hunt. That's not happening. But he is going to have a very difficult task.
It would be less ridiculous than Kyle McCord, I feel.
Kyle McCord made more sense to be in the Heisman Trophy hunt than Steve Angeli. I'll give Kyle McCord a little bit more respect than that from that perspective. Joey Aguilar as well. I'm going to confess something, Will.
Okay.
This is where I'm going to ask you to get out the Google machine.
Okay.
Tell me I'm crazy here. Tennessee fans, you might not want to hear this, but I need to get this out there because I can't stop thinking about it. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since Tennessee announced that Joey Aguilar, the transfer from UCLA by way of App State, a couple of other schools that he started his career at in California. Are we sure that Joey Aguilar is not Jared Garantano?
Oh, no. Oh, man. What is going on with the lookalike generation of quarterbacks?
Well,
we got Raiola, we got Simmons at Ole Miss. Now we got this.
I'm not saying he's trying to look like Jared Garantano, who we found out his name was Garantano, not Garantano, because he decided his senior year to actually correct people on that. Are we 100% positive that this isn't some massive prank? In this era of college football, where the NCAA has basically thrown up its hands to all parties, most notably Tennessee, are we positive that the Vols didn't just call up Garantano the second that the Nico news broke.
These fans have been through enough this offseason. I won't stand for this.
Are you looking at these guys side by side?
I'm looking at them side by side. And
am I crazy?
Yeah, I think it's like we have fewer, because of social media. This is just a deeper theory I have on life. Get ready, guys. I think because of social media, we have fewer archetypes of guy to pick from, or just people in general, because you just see inspiration in this world so easily and everybody follows. Like the weird guy in school doesn't really exist anymore. He's just following the weird guy trends on TikTok. And so I think that's why we have so many look-alike quarterbacks these days.
Could this be an Avril Lavigne situation?
There you go.
Or for the non-millennial conspiracy theorists, could this be a Paul McCartney situation, silent replacement? I'm just saying, at the very least, same breed of human. They look very, very similar. And I'm warning you, Tennessee fans, even if you think that they are, in fact, different people, Joey Aguilar, Jared Garantano, they might look like the same person on the field at moments. Some bad interceptions, some moments where the receiver runs a different route than he's expecting. All that stuff is in play, especially in week one and what will be his debut. But I don't think the Syracuse run defense will stop the three-headed Josh Heupel rushing attack with Bishop, Lewis, and Thomas. Peyton Lewis having a breakout year is very much on my radar. I liked Deshaun Bishop a lot last year, but Peyton Lewis is the one with his speed. I'm just kind of going, I could see him having all these big plays in that Tennessee offense and just those wide splits, 70 yards off to the races. And we're like, hey, we should be talking about Peyton Lewis more. I'm going to take Tennessee to win this game, but not cover. I think 14 is a lot of points. I'm going to say Tennessee wins a sloppy game, 20-17.
So this game is actually just more fascinating the more I look at it. I kind of feel like Syracuse is getting disrespected after what they did last year. I mean, you talked about Fran Brown, who was a first-year head coach last year. They went 10-3. They had the big Miami win. You know, I feel like they proved every doubter wrong, and they're sitting here unranked for this game, which is like, what else do you kind of need to see?
A lot of new pieces on that roster.
Yeah, I just feel like for Syracuse, it's kind of like, what is your ceiling? I feel like they got pretty close to it last year, you know, and that being said, both of these teams are kind of a mystery box. You know, in a world where everything is changing, I just keep gripping to the things I know. And I think with Josh Heupel, this is the style of game that if you don't see them come out and just score 14 fast points, you probably should be a little bit worried. I think even the year with Joe Milton, they played a bad Virginia team, mind you, got to start the year, and they were off to the races, and Joe Milton looked like a statue, an automaton, right? And I know that that's not Syracuse. I've just given Syracuse respect ahead of time for that reason. But that being said, in these out-of-conference kind of to start the year games for Josh Heupel, this is when Tennessee has looked like the best team in America for the first 3 weeks of the season and fooled all of us. And so that being said, if they're not running the vertical offense and guys aren't running downfield, I think we got to be a little bit concerned about Aguilar's throw power, his ability to get the ball down the field, because we talk about preparers versus adjusters. Like that was what Josh Heupel was known for on this here podcast for years, where it was like, drive one, set it and forget it. You can go ahead, make sure you're there for drive one, because it's going to be a thing of beauty. There are going to be so many option routes. There's going to be so many go routes. The offense is going to be clicking. And then once you run out of those scripted plays, now we're in a ball game. I think that if we don't have that element anymore with Josh Heupel, I mean, again, there's not been a perfect situation, I don't think, a quarterback for Tennessee, and yet they've been able to move all these pieces around. I don't think their quarterback, now we can all kind of, Tennessee fans, we can all be on the same side and look at your quarterback last year and go, that guy didn't live up to the hype kind of at any point, except for the first couple games. And so that being said, if Tennessee does not kind of, at least in the first quarter, look unbeatable against Syracuse, I think things could be kind of tough sledding for them, because this is where Josh Heupel invents plays. Like this is where he goes, you've never seen this one. Watch this. We're going to get these receivers so wide. They're going to be hugging the cheerleaders, and the defense is never going to have seen anything like this. So yeah, I think that this could be a trap game for Tennessee, because I am respecting Syracuse. I think that Syracuse, like I said, was great last year. It should be ranked. They should feel disrespected. But it feels like Heupel can kind of be, number one, in a prison of his own mind sometimes in SEC play. And number two, they run all the good plays to start the year. We've joked about it, and now it's not even a joke. Every year, they basically, it feels like, show their whole playbook running up 70 points, and then guys just adjust. Like, let's do that again and get the boys fired up in Knoxville.
Does he want to get Joey Aguilar those downfield shots early? I talked about having the 18 pass plays as a potential over-under in this game, and I really think that could be in play. Mm-hmm. You also need to get that guy some reps with receivers that have been banged up in fall camp, and you've probably had a lot of moments in which you thought, man, it'd be really nice to have some continuity in our passing game in ways that they don't. And this is a very new look Tennessee offensive line as well. What are those protections going to look like? Yeah, you've got a veteran quarterback, but there are so many questions on that Tennessee offensive line. And even, your only returning starters, Lance Hurd, your left tackle, who really struggled last year.
Yeah.
Don't laugh, Will. Don't laugh. You're laughing because you're thinking of the PFF numbers. Be nice.
I thought he was okay last year. Kyle was like, this guy was basura. I was like, oh no.
He had a rough year. He's acknowledged that he has had a rough year, but the beauty of his situation and kind of his frame, his skill set, he's going to get another opportunity. Maybe he's going to be better this year. It wouldn't be the craziest thing if that happened. So,
and if you don't just simply transfer to Alabama, you can be the next Caden Proctor and just go in the first round. There you go.
Very different. I'm
just kidding.
That we're talking about. But that's something that I think is going to be really interesting is what is Josh Heupel doing to make Joey Aguilar look like he's comfortable in these spots, because it's going to take a bit. I really do. I think that there could be some tough moments early on, and ideally Tennessee would like to be able to establish the run. That should be the strongest thing working in their favor in this game, is that ground game, and they will lean on it very, very heavily, especially having 3 fresh backs. Can you imagine how that's going to feel for Josh Heupel after how decimated their backfield was late last season? It's like, oh man, even Dylan Sampson can't give it a go. They really were lacking bodies down the stretch there. And to be able to have, we got 3 guys that are capable of running wild. Star Thomas as well. Like, this could be a lot of fun to kind of see that on display. Maybe it's the resurgence of the Tennessee backfield committee, and that's maybe what wins out week 1.
Yeah, and I had talked about this right when I joined the podcast. It was right around the Josh Heupel kind of era in Tennessee. And one of my buddies went to UCF, so I watched a ton of Josh Heupel at UCF. And this is the most fascinating evolution, adapt or die that we've seen at Josh Heupel, because we talked about it was kind of like the Mike D'Antoni's 7-second Suns whenever Heupel was at Tennessee or at UCF, and now it's kind of funny, like we're both here excited to see this stable of backs, which they had at UCF, but like ground and pound football, killing the clock. Like, it was so many incompletions at UCF that would just kill their drive, and the defense was back out there. This is like, it's like he went to Wikipedia. It was like, okay, SEC football, they run the ball, they play good defense, they have good offensive line, they pay for quarterbacks.
They still would speed things. They still were like last in the country in time of possession those first couple of years. And like, when you have a quarterback that can actually run that system, is Joey Aguilar going to be running tempo the same way? Is it going to look like that? Are they going to actually slow things down for him? Because that takes a lot of time to figure out and process. Could definitely be a different feel than any of the Josh Heupel UCF offenses or the early Tennessee offenses.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, where it's like we're sitting here going, oh, wow, like this could be such a sloppy ground and pound game, and thinking like Josh Heupel ground and pound game was so weird when he got here. But that's what we saw last year. Great defense. We saw obviously Dylan Sampson last year, but a stable of backs is just like, this guy is like turned into a Southerner. We're turning into like, Boobie Dixon and stuff. We're just handed like billion carries, leaning on you. So it's been cool to see that evolution. And this obviously isn't the quarterback that Josh Heupel, chose or wanted and all that stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see, when your back's against the wall, you become your truest self. So it's going to be interesting to see if he sticks with kind of what he turned into, or if he goes, okay, you know what, let's air this B out and see what we got.
Let's talk about the big headliner in week 1, the biggest headliner. I don't want to say the big headliner because there's other big headliners. We got 3 top 10 games in week 1. Mm-hmm. Number 1, Texas. Number 3, Ohio State. Ohio State's a 2.5-point favorite. Lord have mercy if Fox has not agreed to a deal with YouTube TV, and we are finding different unique ways to be able to watch this as a YouTube TV subscriber. Hopefully that is resolved.
Connor?
I had an antenna at different points living down here because I'm like, I'm not paying for cables like 220 something with internet. Like, what am I doing?
Nothing will make you feel more like a dad than just fuzzy Ohio State, Texas week 1.
That's not what an antenna means. That's not what that means. If we are able to be having Gus Johnson on our TVs, which Lord willing, we will be able to listen to that by the time people are listening to this. Hopefully that'll be solved. But the over-under I have is 9 Gus Johnson references to Arch's famous elders, at least 9. He'll say it kind of ironically, but also in a tone that makes it seem like he knows something that the viewer doesn't, even though we've all known about this for, 7 years, 8 years, that Arch was going to be a thing.
Lord have mercy. Started to everyone. It's so hard to quote unquote feel bad for Texas, but I've actually kind of started to empathize or feel bad for Arch because it's like everyone wants to find a new way to talk about his family in kind of a cheeky way. And I'm not talking about Gus Johnson specifically, but I'm sure throughout the you'll get, the other day, I saw his great uncle, or I was reading about this story about him playing kickball back in the day. And it's like the family tree has just gotten so expanded by everybody wanting to talk about it. It's like, can we just watch some ball here? You know?
Yeah, but I get it.
Yeah. Like we get it. You got to do it. But it's like from his standpoint, I get why he just doesn't talk to anyone, you know?
That first scramble that he has, Peyton and Eli couldn't do that. Emphasis on that. Meanwhile, Archie is like, buddy, that's all I did.
That's what I was going to say. That's the other minute. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you can make the case that it's the biggest opener in college football history, and it's not just Arch. These teams faced off in an awesome semifinal game last year. I think 3 of the top 4 returning players in the sport will be on the field with Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, Anthony Hill Jr., depending on how you feel about Carnell Tate. Maybe you want to throw him in that group as well, but that's not even necessarily assuming Arch is going to be a top 3, top 4 guy, but there's just star power galore. Unlike the Alabama FSU opener in Atlanta to start 2017, which was the first Mercedes-Benz game, this top 3 matchup is on a college campus. It's Corso's last college game day, so you've got all this extremely unique pageantry going into it. I'm not even talking about the Dave Portnoy Ohio State band and all that stuff, which I'll be more interested in Corso's final college game day game personally. And then you add in the Arch factor of this being his first career start on the road and his debut as Texas's QB1, because last year he got his first career starts, but he wasn't Texas's starter. It's just a different sort of feel to it. It just all adds up. It just all adds up. And I'm excited for it. I really am. I love that we've got Colin Simmons talking trash on Instagram, sharing the Julian Sayin announcement as Ohio State starting quarterback. And then if you saw the tweet from Travis Resick, apologies, Travis, if I just butchered your name, but Simmons basically doubled down on that by saying, I'm just glad they have a quarterback that I'm ready to sack. Yeah. Okay. Point
Maybe
taken.
this is a sign of me getting older, but I can never get mad at these kids for stuff like that. It's just like, that's so cool. I think he's a great player. There's just so much to get excited about in this game, to your point. I mean, I think Ryan Williams would take a little bit of disrespect to the top, 3 or 4 players. But that being said, I think you're right. On both sides of the ball, both of these rosters are loaded. Yeah.
I think Ryan Williams no, I don't. That's going to come across too negative. And I love Ryan Williams, so I'm not going to bring up the stat that I was going to post Georgia and about his receiving yards and the numbers that he didn't hit after the game. I'm not going to bring that up. The thing that's being overlooked in this game, though, Will, Julian Sayin is very decorated in his own right. Classmates actually with Colin Simmons, both 5-star guys in that 24 class. Mm-hmm. But he's getting his first career start against the Texas defense that is loaded to the gills with proven commodities, just loaded. And it helps that you've got Jeremiah Smith, best player in college football, Carnell Tate. That's great. You've also got a first-time play caller in Brian Hartline. You've got new tackles. You've got a very new look backfield as well. Will's laughing. What are you laughing at, Will?
Brian Hartline. Again, we're so old, bro. He's done such a great job as a receivers coach. I'm actually kind of more scared of him than some of the other situations they've had going on. But man, he's going to be so nasty. I'm so scared of him.
I don't know. Is he going to be great as a play caller? I don't know.
I think he's one of those guys, and we just saw the opposite of this with Luke Fickell, so who knows, right? But I think he's one of those guys that he's actually kind of gone the right way and kind of stayed in the background. He's been a great recruiter, and so it's like if he's committed to the brand, he could just stay there forever like Kirby. It scares me if he's good.
True, very true. But there will be a lot of new for Julian Sayin, and we just kind of assume that Ohio State quarterbacks are up for the task because when was the last time that they weren't? It's been a minute. So put in another 5-star, assume it's going to work out. And
Michigan, probably.
You're talking specific games. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I was talking more so like whole seasons and who the player becomes. But, we assume Ohio State is going to have Julian Sayin getting rid of the ball very, very quickly and maybe going with some tempo to prevent that Texas defense from being able to pin its ears back. A lot of Colin Simmons coming in and out of the lineup and stuff like that. So he's not able to just sit there and tee off on a young quarterback, making long progressions. Last year in the Cotton Bowl, our guy, Pete Kwiatkowski, he said, we are not going to let Jeremiah Smith beat us. We are going to bracket that guy. Somebody else will beat us. He had 1 catch for 3 yards. Mission accomplished, except for the fact that they didn't win the game. Carnell Tate became the guy who more or less had a big say in beating Texas. I think he's, again, the key to this game, as well as Texas maybe not allowing a 75-yard screen pass to a running back for a touchdown at the end of the first half. That would be an area that they'd want to correct.
I could do it. Yeah.
Kind of a backbreaker. I will be stunned and also really impressed if this game turns into a shootout. I think that's the most unlikely outcome. I'm a little surprised that the over-under is even 47.5. And I think that's just because you've got a lot of star power on offense, really on both sides of the ball. But I think there is a really tough path to see this game being decided in the 30s or something like that, or even in the high 20s. It's not a crazy number, but I just think this could be a struggle for both offenses with what they're facing on defense. I don't expect Arch to be perfectly crisp. I don't expect this game to have Feinbaum coming on every single platform on ESPN on Monday saying, see, I told you this guy is as good as Tim Tebow and as decorated as anybody that we've ever seen in this sport, and this is why. I don't expect that to play out. A lot of questions that Texas has up front with this new look offensive line. And I wonder if some hesitancy is evident with Arch, a game in which left tackle Trevor Gooseby, a guy that I'm really, really high on, he's going to be working through a hand injury. What does it look like for him in this first game starting on the road? You're going to have protections that Arch is going to have to be figuring out in a very raucous atmosphere. I think it's a rough start for the Arch hype train. I think Ohio State wins this one 24-14.
Man, what an all-time How Do You Like Me Now season out of Ryan Day. And I'm laughing so hard because obviously, like last season, they hired Chip Kelly and we're like, you bozo, you simpleton, this will never work. And now they've come back with Brian Hartline and Matt Patricia. And boy, howdy, was winning that championship just going to change the course of college football history? Because now you can't tell Ryan Day anything. We used to just be able to poke fun at Ryan Day and be like, wow, you're such a goober, you do all this stuff. But no, this might actually kind of work now that you could lose a couple of games and still win a championship. I am so fascinated to see the redness of the faces on the sidelines between Ryan Day and Matt Patricia.
Press box will be up there with the pencil, and I think he and Hartline are both going to be in the press box for this one.
Yeah, it's so funny because like obviously the Jim Knowles thing happens, and it's like I had to do a little blast from the past to go, who do they have? Matt Patricia's about I said to myself, it doesn't matter who this name is. I'm going to agree with you just based on the talent and the pedigree. And this is one of the only names that could have made me consider that, Matt Patricia. But that being said, I'm still with you. I think it's a week one field out game between two top three teams. These games do not turn into these big like bleep shows because you have so much pageantry going into it. Guys just start off tight. They're college kids. It kind of is like the Super Bowl in that way, where it's like, okay, like first couple of drives really matter, but you got to get loose as quickly as you can. And I think this being, like you said, on a college campus matters a ton. But yeah, that being said, I would see, I mean, what would you consider, like, what do you consider, not for this game specifically, but what would be a modern definition of a low scoring game?
Low 20s, over under of the under hitting a game with a total score in the 30s would be a low scoring game for sure.
Yeah.
I could have said that in a cleaner way, but yeah, you get what I'm saying.
For sure. Yeah, I think this could get into like the high 20s on each side just because there's so much talent, busted play here or there. But I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be a track meet. And I think that just based on where those two teams are, man, this would be an all-time Ryan Day fall in his face, wouldn't it? I'm going to still pick Ohio State, but it would be so funny.
Country. I mean,
it would be so funny if they lost. But I just, with the new pieces for Texas, we talked about, they did bring a lot more guys back than people kind of realize just because they lost all that talent. But starting off with the momentum, I like Ohio State here.
If Matt Patricia ruins Caleb Downs, the amount of vitriol, not just Ohio State fans, but college football fans that want to see the best version of Caleb Downs, because this is the last chance that we get to watch a really special defensive player in our sport. But there will be so many people that just rip Matt Patricia. And that storyline would be interesting. I would still rather see the best version of Caleb Downs just because it's just fun to watch that guy go and the instincts that he has. And they could very much be on display in a game like this. I would expect them to, given what they're going to ask him to do with so many new pieces surrounding him on that Ohio State defense. But it is going to be bizarre every single time we look up after maybe an Ohio State sack and it's Matt Patricia just with a pencil in his ear shouting something, or I don't know. I'm going to need those booth shots of Matt Patricia as much as possible. Is he clean shaven now? I want to see he's clean shaven now.
Oh,
I could be wrong on
man.
that.
I can't. Yeah. Okay. You know what, man? Why am I'm not putting the house on the line here. I'm going to pick Texas here. I just can't. I was so wrong about Ohio State last year, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, okay, but think about PK, think about Steve Sarkisian versus Matt Patricia. Like, if you pick Steve Sarkisian versus Matt Patricia and you're wrong, fine. So never mind. I'm going to pick Texas because at the end of the day, Sark is the best play caller maybe in football, and I just think something has to be true here. Matt Patricia can't just become a smart enough defense. I know they're co-defensive coordinators, whatever. That's even more of an issue when you have the amount of motion and different looks and different like plays that look the same with window dressing that end up being different plays under Sark's system. So actually, I like Texas the more I think about it.
Something to keep in mind, and I've been incorrectly saying this throughout the offseason, so apologies. I've been saying throughout the offseason we've never seen a team lose in week one and still make the college football playoff. Clemson did that last year. Clemson did that only by virtue of Miami puking on its shoes against Syracuse and then backing their way into the ACC championship and then getting the ACC automatic bid. Clemson would not have gotten an at-large bid. So we have not seen an at-large team get into the field after losing in week one. Now, there are 3 top 10 games, 3 matchups of top 10 teams in week one. So we assume that will change this year. That will be kind of the takeaway. And like nobody's going to be bailing on one of these teams. Maybe if it's like a 35-7 type game, maybe you could see people going like, see, they're not built for the long haul. But I do think that getting to 10 wins for both of these teams is still going to be really difficult if you lose this game. And that's kind of the mark that we're talking about. And we saw last year. I mean, there were multiple 10-2 teams, Miami, BYU, that were left out and not part of that conversation, even though we just assume, well, yeah, losses, what do they really matter in this day and age? There's going to be grace, the new record strength metric. We'll see how much that matters, okay? We'll see how much that matters when push actually comes time to shove and these decisions are made. So that will be the silver lining for whoever loses this game. Whoever loses this game, if it's a close game, they're not going to like fall off the face of the earth and be like, oh, they're number 15 in the country. But just something to keep in the back of your mind is just it's not a given that if you lose week one, that you're just going to rattle off 10 wins in your next 11 games and just have this perfectly clear path to the playoff. Just something to consider.
Good to remind me that before week one. I had followed the Hopium the last couple of years. I will say I want to just close the loop on this. I'm looking at Matt Patricia right now, and he has the kind of dopiest husband beard I've ever seen. He looks like he's at a brewery in this official photo.
When was the photo taken, though? How recent is this photo?
I'm looking at like stuff at the Ohio State facility, like he's at the practice field, so it had to be decently recent. Maybe you shaved this week, I don't know, but this guy looks like Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny. I thought that I thought that he would be more respectable without the fluff, but bring the fluff back. I can't root for this guy. Everything within me is telling me to pick Texas. Maybe I'll be wrong again. That's fine. No one can fault me for picking against Tennessee after watching that Michigan game last year, but I just can't bet on this versus Matt Patricia. At least the other one looked like he was going to beat me up if I messed up his overly complicated defense. Now it's like, what are you going to do? File a blog post on me? Anyway.
Fair. Matt Patricia's beard does him no favors. If Ohio State struggles defensively this year, that beard is coming off. Rest assured. It will be. All right. Number 8, Alabama. 13.5-point favorite on the road against Florida State. Over-under I have is 293 yards of offense for Florida State. Will, I got you laughing again. What's up?
The more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm just imagining Alabama drubbing Florida State at opener.
All right, we're going to spoil the pick. That's fine.
I'm talking about my pick. What you mean? Yeah.
I know. Yeah, that's fine. I'll get to why I'm going to disagree with you on that one. But 293, that number, the total offense for Florida State, that was the most that Florida State had in a game against FBS competition last year. What game was that, you ask? It was week 1 against Boston College. They had already lost week 0, and then they lose that game to week 1. A certain promise of eating feces was then not delivered and may or may not have, but definitely did curse Florida State's season after that. But that was significant because it was a 13-point effort from Florida State in a losing effort against a certain Thomas Castellanos. That's ancient history and not relevant now because Castellanos is running the show at Florida State. According to Mike Norvell, relevant history does include Gus Malzahn's track record as an offensive coordinator 15 years ago. According to Castellanos, relevant history does not include Alabama last year when it had its best scoring defense in 7 years. No Nick Saban, clearly no chance that Alabama stops Scrappy Doo. For the what is he supposed to say crowd, and I've seen some of that going into this game in week 1 who might have missed the comments that one Thomas Castellanos made to On3. This is not about, like your quarterback should lack confidence and he should just be totally quiet. What you don't do is give a proven defense an entire summer to have bulletin board material and say, I just don't see them stopping me. Mm-hmm. I do. I see Alabama stopping Thomas Castellanos. Maybe not for all 4 quarters. I don't want to disrespect him in that way. Lord knows Alabama had issues with mobile quarterbacks at times last year. I'm not going to pretend like they have just all of a sudden figured that out. And maybe a new look Florida State offense with Gus Malzahn comes out firing and ready to go, and the home crowd is into it, and everybody's feeling like, wow, this is a new year for Florida State. But I'm just not sold on an entirely new look group having the upper hand for 60 minutes. FSU might have 9 transfers starting on offense in this game. 9. That is a lot. You are really banking on being able to keep a team on its heels and having continuity from the jump. With
Mike Norvell's got it right where he wants it. That's the perfect Mike Norvell team.
Perfect Mike Norvell team might start with transfers, but it's at least gotten some time to figure things out and figure out who they were. Like that 23 team built largely on transfers. Mm-hmm. They had 22 to be able to figure it out. And a lot of those guys were there in 21 as well. It's like it's just a little bit different when we're talking about these guys are playing in their first game in a Florida State uniform. And I just tend to think that's not going to bode well for an entirety of a 60-minute game. I think Bama should have everything it needs to take care of business in this one. Quietly, I think Ryan Grubb's got a lot to prove in this game. We haven't really dug into why he was one and done with the Seahawks. And it was just so quickly, when's the reunion's going to happen with Kalen DeBoer? But Ryan Grubb is trying to rebuild his image as one of the elite offensive minds in football. And he got fired because he didn't scheme well enough in the ground game. And it became a major point of contention with the Seahawks, who didn't have to worry about that with Pete Carroll. And a lot of the time it was, hey, let Russ cook. You're running the football too much. And all of a sudden it was, man, we don't run the football well enough. And that really plagued that Seahawks team. And that's why he was in and out there. We know that 2023 Washington was a sling it all over the yard unit with Michael Penix and 3 NFL receivers. Like they could do that. They didn't need to have this ground and pound type attack. And you know what? This Bama team has been praised for its offensive line. I think praised a little bit too much, in my opinion. But now you enter the season with real questions at running back after Jam Miller is going to be out for the foreseeable future. It looks like the first few weeks. Maybe he's going to return for that Georgia game. Richard Young had the most carries of any returning Alabama back, and he had 27, half of which came against non-power conference foes. Maybe Daniel Hill, maybe Louisiana transfer, Dre Washington, maybe those guys are going to pop in this first game, and all of a sudden we're going to be going, oh, Bama's just got another one. But you've got a quarterback in Ty Simpson starting for the first time in his career in what will be a hostile atmosphere, perhaps also similar conditions to what he saw a couple years ago in that disastrous second half he had against South Florida, where that we had a rain delay in that one. Could be similar because it's August in Florida, and that type of thing happens in the middle of the afternoon here. Yep. Don't I know it? You need to be able to punch FSU in the mouth if you're Bama. You need to be able to run the football. I think Grubb finds a way to do that. I think it's a little bit sloppier than some are expecting. Maybe not the game in which Ryan Williams establishes himself as one of the 4 best players in college football. I think Bama ultimately wins 28-17, so not quite covering the spread.
You know what's so funny about this game? It's like we have all this data, but it all could, like, it's almost too much. It's like, okay, well, we have last year, but Jalen Miller was not here anymore, so that doesn't matter. It's like, well, we have the NFL stuff, but that also doesn't really matter. And FSU, it's like, well, we have what Norvell has been, but that's been completely night and day. And then we have Gus Malzahn. I guess to your point, maybe we could look at the high school stuff in Arkansas. Like, I don't know. That was during like the first Bush term. Like, I don't know.
Springdale. Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know. Like, these teams could show up and you could tell me 1,000 different realities. I would say about 800 of them still have Alabama winning. And I would say of those, the majority are still pretty comfortably. But I will say this, and you did hit something we can kind of grab onto here. Establishing the run game. We know Alabama doesn't have like that factor back. Oh, this is really gripping analysis. Well, you got to run the football. But that being said, Ty Simpson can be a little bit of a dual threat guy, but you talked about that USF game last year. I'll tell you, if
2
I
years
could
ago.
just, oh,
2
sorry,
years ago.
2 years ago. If I could just fantasy draft someone to not be in that style of game again against, it is Gus Malzahn. That is my only word of advice here for Bama fans, which is score early, get the deficit up, like play prevent, basically, not prevent, you know what I'm saying, but just nurse that lead, because you don't want to be in a back and forth game, because Gus will start feeling a little bit of that Toby Keith going on. He'll start drawing stuff up. Suddenly he'll be early career Josh Heupel the first drive, and you're like, what is this? This is like a go route. And so, point being, I think that the physical, like, again, Alabama can lean on their physicality on defense. That is what they were last year. If anything else, that's what we could look at, is that Alabama still has some dudes on defense with a lot of pride. The spats on the field are over with. You know, they've all kind of bought in under one leader, and Kane Womack. And so I think that basically Castellanos is a little bit smaller of a quarterback. He's the type of guy that you want to get in his face early, frustrate him, basically just collapse the pocket around him. I know he can be a little bit more mobile, and he would tell you that would probably be where he succeeds the best, but I think he's not seen this level of talent before. It's one thing to have guys in, you know, these different conferences that he's played in kind of chasing you around, but having these dudes from Alabama is just a completely different story. Until you see, you know, the creature from Alabama coming at you, you can't really prepare for it. So that being said, I think that Alabama needs to take some risks on defense, because they're a sound unit there, right? They're a blitz happy defense, but against this level of, I hate to say disorganization, but I don't know what else you call it at FSU last couple of years. Let's not make this into a game, y'all. This should be a blowout, and let's keep it moving.
I don't look at FSU's transfer additions as, wow, that changes the trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's going to elevate the floor. I was once a squirrel white believer. It's hard for me to picture him going off against Bama when I watched the last 2 years against Tennessee with an elite offensive mind in Josh Heupel, who did a couple of better things at UCF than one Gus Malzahn did, but we don't have to discuss that. With all due respect to Roydell Williams and what's going to be a revenge game for him against his former Alabama team, there was a reason why he left for Florida State. And if he's able to stay healthy this year, who knows? Like, maybe he's going to have his moments, but it's hard for me to look at those additions that they've made on offense with how bad they were last year and just think, oh, well, Gus is going to make it work. It's really hard to picture that. And this comes down to dudes. I don't know that FSU has the dudes. I don't. If they're 2-10 this year, again, I'll be stunned, just because you just can't be as bad as you were last year with how inept they were on offense. I mean, I was looking back at some of the numbers, and my God, pour one out for DJU.
If we could just give him another year, he'd show us something, I'll tell you.
Get him back with Oregon State, Jonathan Smith, and an offensive line that can protect him, and he'll be all right for you. But the situation last year at FSU was not exactly one that did him any favors, and he did not do FSU any favors. I just don't see the path to FSU ground and pound 60 minutes doing this against Bama. And if that all of a sudden, if that possibility opens up and Kalen DeBoer loses to an unranked team for the fourth time during his Alabama tenure, yeesh, he's got a ton of pressure on him to take care of business in this game. Or else people like me who have banged the drum that this guy knows what he's doing, he's going to figure things out, there will be people going, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to work through this, because this is a game that you have to show up and win.
Absolutely. And one quick thing on the transfers. You know, it's funny. Norvell has actually built the team that I think people accuse Deion Sanders of building, which is like, you don't recruit high school, you just get transfers. You know, I have a lot of respect for what they did. I've been very complimentary for FSU, especially because they smoked LSU twice, and I was at both of them. But that being said, having these kind of inspirational stories, right? Jordan Travis, Jared Verse, Keon Coleman. Okay, that's cool. But you still have to have a structurally sound football team. And those guys are kind of what takes it over the edge. When you're counting on, we say 9 transfers to all pop and all have a second life and all be a different player than they were somewhere else. Like, that's kind of what we've arrived on with transfers. Is all we can say is, we can say guys got a bad deal, we can say all this, but their initial plan didn't work. And when you got 9 guys whose initial plan didn't work, and that's what they have in common, who's to say their second plan is going to work? That's all I got to say. So maybe it will work in a couple of weeks, but week 1 against Alabama, probably not the time to figure that out.
Yes. All right, well, let's talk about another top 10 showdown. Number 9, LSU. Number 4, Clemson. Clemson's a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 243 LSU rushing yards. It's high. It's high. That is what Clemson allowed on average in its 3 SEC losses last year. I have heard so many people throughout this offseason go, well, Clemson has the fewest questions. And I think that is based on Cade Klubnik returning as a preseason All-American at the game's most important position, plus a receiver room that looks like the ones that Clemson had in the 2010s, a defense that just went out and got Tom Allen as arguably the best defensive coordinator in America, a defensive line that's headlined by preseason All-Americans, future first-round guys, number one in the country, percentage of returning production. All those things make you think Clemson doesn't have any questions. But on Sunday, in a column for SDS, one early thought on each SEC game, I posed the simple question, hey, are we sure that Clemson can stop the run? After all, Clemson allowed an average of 250 rushing yards in the final 4 games last year, including 288 to the Citadel. That group was 85th in rushing yards per game allowed and 99th in rushing yards per carry allowed, which was almost a full yard per carry worse against FBS teams that finish with a winning record. So in this column, I pose the question, are we sure that Clemson can stop the run? Well, let's just say a little birdie told me that Dabo Swinney screenshotted that and is using that as ammo for his team. Again,
who's not to say LSU can run the football, Connor? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't know why we need to motivate Clemson to stop LSU, who couldn't run the football to save their lives last year.
True. Very, very true. Both things are true. Okay. And I posed this question by using facts. And I've been told by one Dabo Swinney to tune in on Saturday night. So food for thought. And I can promise you I will be. I will be watching LSU and Clemson. I will be very eager to see if Clemson can stop the run or if I will have to clap back and say, well, I think I was right to ask that question. What does that tell me? For starters, Dabo knows his team is good. Okay? Darn good. He is having to look far and wide the week of his game to play all the angles. Because last I checked, Dabo would rather be spinning the narrative that it's little old Clemson instead of a group that's being picked by a lot of people to win a national championship. That's the territory that Clemson is in now in 2025 that is so different than the previous few years. For what it's worth, probably not going to see LSU run for 243 yards. Okay. I get that. I haven't done that since the 2023 Florida game where Jayden Daniels got every blade of grass that he wanted that night.
What a beautiful day.
LSU's run game has been a massive issue in these season openers, Will. I knew it was bad. I didn't realize it was this bad. 113 rushing yards in 2024, 113 in 23, 139 in 22, 48 rushing yards in that UCLA disaster in 21, and then 80 rushing yards in that 2020 game against Mississippi State where KJ Costello is still throwing for yards. Bad. The pass defense, even worse. Go look up those numbers. They're not particularly inspiring either. Don't tell Dabo about the things working against LSU. But I do think so many people have overlooked the things that are working against Clemson. If Death Valley Jr., according to Brian Kelly, if that Death Valley is the place where dreams go to die, tell me why Clemson only has 2 home wins against AP top 25 finishers in the last 4 seasons, and both of them were against Sam Hartman. Different Sam Hartman teams, one Wake Forest, one Notre Dame. Brian Kelly doesn't have the rings. Dabo's got the rings. So I understand why some will tell you that one wins big games and one does not win big games. Okay, I get that. In matchups against top 10 teams at the time of the matchup, since Brian Kelly arrived at LSU, Dabo has 2 wins in those games compared to 3 for Brian Kelly. I'll tell you that in the last 4 years, Dabo is 3-6 against the SEC and 4-11 against AP top 25 finishers. That's right, 4-11 against AP top 25 finishers the last 4 seasons. From 2015 to 2019, Will, Clemson was 19-3 in those games. 19-3 against AP top 25 finishers. That is what a bona fide juggernaut looks like. Okay?
I'm getting the smelling salts. I'm getting hype. Okay. Okay.
If I'm giving Clemson bulletin board material by pointing these things out, these facts, okay, then they are truly living in their own world, which I won't dismiss that. It's Clemson. They might be living in their own world. LSU's winning this football game. LSU is leaning on that ground game finally. And Caden Durham is going to be ready. The Blake Baker defense, it's not going to be perfect against Cade Klubnik, who has had some efficiency issues against the teams that actually matter, but is still an exceptional quarterback. And I came away from that Texas game so impressed with him. But I think that group, that offense, again, too one-dimensional. That backfield's going to have 14 career carries. 14 career carries in this one. And nobody's talking about it. And nobody's talking about the fact that they couldn't run the football at all last year. And they're converting receivers to running backs. And they're doing whatever they can. And, but it's a Matt Luke coached offensive line. They're going to be just fine. I'll believe it when I see it. Mm-hmm. LSU wins a down-to-the-wire thriller. 31-28. Brian Kelly finally gets LSU a season-opening victory in the 2020s.
All right, for all y'all that want to call me a homer, go ahead, listen up here. As much as I want to believe that, you know what I'm saying? I'm just looking at pictures of Caden Durham's neck right now to get me fired up. I just don't think that LSU can fix their run game with all these transfers on the offensive line after one offseason. I think Caden Durham is the truth. I wish Josh Williams got 0 carries after we saw how good Caden Durham was after basically the South Carolina game. What scares me about this Clemson team is even in the game against Texas, where Texas was pushing them around, very uncharacteristic of these teams. Quick little aside, I rewatched Catholics versus Convicts the other day, and so hard to root for Notre Dame, right? But there was one pretty interesting quote that Holtz had that stuck with me where he said, when a team runs a trick play, they're not good enough to beat you straight up. That's kind of what this feels like when you're talking about the bulletin board material, where it's like, oh, we're getting jazzed up about the truth. And so I get that side of it. But what scares me about Brian Kelly and opening games on the road is that Clemson could play the same game they had against Texas last year and beat LSU, because the strength of LSU's defense, as we know it, okay, again, they have some great transfers, but I'm not going to go and say all this about FSU and just say, but our transfers, they're different. Okay, that was the trash. Okay, we're back. So, anyway, so I'm not going to say LSU's transfers are different. You don't know our transfers. They're different. So point being, on the back end of the defense, I like those guys and they'll gel. But the strength of LSU is their linebackers, Blake Baker, Weeks, Perkins, Patrick Payton, the pass rush, all these guys, right? And so that being said, if Clemson just opts out of running the football and Klubnik throws for 400 yards, I think they'd be perfectly happy with that. Whereas on LSU's side of the ball, I think because of some other issues in pass pro on the road against Clemson's D-line, with a motivated Debo that has been getting 2 days at church, telling them how sorry they've been and praying for a miracle. I do get a little bit scared that under pressure, Nuss might make a couple of mistakes. Now, that being said, the key to this game is Caden Durham. I think you did hit on that. Not even as a runner, but as a safety valve out of the backfield. I think that is a guy that can prevent some of those mistakes that Nussmeier is known for making in some of these moments. I think that's why Josh Williams got on the field, was because of pass pro. Okay. Josh Williams is a great pass protector. Caden Durham as a freshman didn't exactly have that. I think that if Caden Durham as a blocker and as a receiver can carry his weight, I don't anticipate LSU being built to go down there and run the ball. But I think that's where his role will really shine, not preventing the really costly sack, fumble, turnover, picking a guy up, being that safety valve so Nuss doesn't try to hit a guy downfield and see the wrong tiger. You know what I'm saying? So I think that Clemson wins this game close. I think that it doesn't stop LSU's season. And like I said, I think that we got to commend these teams for playing these games. But I just think in a contest of a little bit of continuity, if LSU was at home, I would feel a little bit differently. But so much is working in Clemson's favor from that standpoint, where it's going to take a lot out of it's going to take a lot out of Nussmeier with kind of the weird offensive coordinator situation they totally didn't get figured out last year. It would take Nussmeier truly putting the team on his back and having like 40 passing attempts and being like, all right, Saints, this is some Drew Brees magic out of me. Like, don't worry about anybody else. The defense could struggle. Anybody could struggle, but it's on me. I think that's what it would take, because I don't really see, the guy that could take the pressure off other than him from this standpoint.
For what it's worth, I could obviously see Brian Kelly getting to the podium. Maybe not one-handing slamming it. That's a little bit too 2024. Can he do like a headbutt of the table if they lose this time? Or maybe like how, post-game press conference, you've got like recorders and phones and stuff that are all on the table. Like just one clean sweep, swipe them all off the table and just offer to pay for everybody's phone afterwards.
But nobody records that. Yeah. I can see it clear as day.
Everybody's phones are just shattered into a million pieces. Could we see something like that happening? Absolutely. Of course I can. I literally witnessed it 2 years ago in that Florida State game here in Orlando. And I was blown away at how despondent LSU looked coming in as a preseason top 5 team and seeing the collapse in the fourth quarter. Like I was well aware of how this has played out every single year. And there is a very realistic possibility that all the things that we outlined are not going to matter. And it will just simply be, oh yeah, it's LSU in a season opening game. Why would you bank on that? Why would you ever assume that? Okay, I'm ready for that to be my takeaway and to have egg on my face. But this assumption that Clemson is just back at 2010s levels is one of the more frustrating things I've endured. And I've tried to bite my tongue on a little bit because I've Clemson going to a semifinal this year. Like, I'm not down on Clemson. Like I think Clemson deserves to start off as like one of the top 5 teams or top 6 teams in college football. So I'm not even going to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, they're not going to win a single meaningful game this year. They will. They have too much talent not to. But to just pretend that they have turned the corner when we saw why they struggled in some of these games last year blows me away. It's a 4-loss team last year.
Yeah.
They lost 4 games last year. And this assumption that they are just at a different level, I'm just not there. Maybe this game will talk me into it, but yeah, Dabo, there you go. There's 15 minutes, 20 minutes of bulletin board material. Just add that to the facts that I pointed out on Sunday.
And to be clear, I agree with you. I think both things can be true. I mean, Clemson can still be a deeply flawed team that gets exposed down the stretch and they struggle in ACC play even. And who even knows who's in that conference now? They could play Army and lose. I don't know. But played SMU in a conference championship last year. Anyway, so point being, like, all that could be true, right? And they could still struggle against, a team in the semifinal, team in the conference championship level. But what we've seen, we talked about preparers versus adjusters. I expected Brian Kelly to be this big preparer, and that's why I was wrong. And when you look back at Notre Dame, that was where he struggled, right? He's actually a really good adjuster, which is so crazy for a guy like him, where we've seen the same feeling every year. This is why Brian Kelly shouldn't have gotten this job. He's in over his head. He's yelling at his players. Keyshawn Booty's deleting his Instagram. It's gone. And then they just lock in after that. And so I don't know if he overthinks himself. I don't know if he underthinks. I mean, to your point about the running attack last year, I vividly remember being like, not totally sober, now knowing I had COVID-19 in Vegas, being like, dang, John Emery Jr. might be the guy. How about that? So I think that like that was such a funny moment to like look back on, in that like he was fine until he tore his ACL. And so that being said, like I think that enough, like Brian Kelly completely changes after week 1. And so the version of LSU that shows up and the version of Clemson that shows up is going to be different. We might get the best version of Clemson and the worst version of LSU. That's what I'm scared of, but it doesn't make me out on either of these teams.
Let's just say if LSU wins this game, we'll have a little message for Dabo. We'll have a little message that he can screenshot this message, whatever.
What do you want me to do because I've picked against LSU? What do you want me to do if LSU wins this game?
Oh, no. You're fine. Like, you've got enough at stake being a fan that has to watch this team try and get over this hump, this insurmountable hump that it's been so far in the 2020s decade. So I don't want to put you in that position where you have to do anything particular. So we're going to abstain from any sort of, we've already laid out kind of the if LSU doesn't win a national championship, I've got to say something positive. I can't say anything negative about the team that ends their national championship run for the entire offseason. Like we've already kind of laid out the stakes. So I don't want to put anything additional on you, but let's just say Dabo will have a little bit of a message for him on Sunday if LSU wins. And then also I could have very much egg on my face. All right. Sunday. That's right. Sunday of week 1, Virginia Tech, number 13, South Carolina. South Carolina is a 7.5-point favorite. Will, the over-under I have is 12 reminders that this is the Beamer Bowl. 12. What do you wear if you're Frank Beamer? What do you wear? What are the rules about rooting against programs that built you a statue? Because, and I was talking about this with Ryan Brown on the next round earlier, It's different when Spurrier is going into the stadium that has a statue built for him, and he's South Carolina's coach. All right, like he's obviously, where his allegiances lie in those moments. Frank Beamer's got an opportunity as a fan watching this game to make a decision. Do I wear the apparel of my son's program, or do I wear the apparel of the program that I built? What would you do? Put yourself in Frank Beamer's shoes for this one.
I think you got to support your son. I think at the end of the day, I mean, maybe you go like South Carolina, like maybe shirt and then like a backward VT hat or something, just so they know. I think what would be super sweet is if I don't think he would do this, but get one of those like custom shirts of just like them, like a picture of them. That would be super sweet because it's like, oh, a VT in South Carolina. But I think overall, what a moment for him, man. I mean, it's just got to be almost no matter the result of this game, when players stay healthy, his son doesn't like really get blown out or anything. That's got to be the top of the mountain as a dad.
Yeah, and I don't know how what his mindset is like as much during a game of how tortured he feels watching his son coach football, but there will be a lot of people dissecting that. I do think that for this game, and come to think of it, man, I should have asked Beamer that at media days. Why didn't I ask him that? That was a dumb miss on my part. I apologize to the people. We'll find out soon enough what Frank is going to be wearing, but I had an opportunity to just let that slip away. More devastating for Virginia Tech fans than seeing Frank Beamer root against their team would be losing another close game. Last year, Virginia Tech played in 6 games that were decided by 10 points or less. They were 0-6 in them. Not great. They were 0-3 in those spots in 2023. And in Brent Pry's first year in 2022, Virginia Tech was 1-4 in games decided by 10 points or less.
That's the ghost of Scott Frost has returned, folks.
This might be even worse, Will. 1-13 in games decided by 10 points or less. Who did that one win come against back in 22?
Who was it?
A Hugh Freeze coached Liberty. Yeah, that's right.
Well, that guy, bless his heart, he has some embarrassing losses.
Hugh Freeze is the only coach who lost to Brent Pry in a game decided by 10 points or less. Hugh Freeze then a week later loses to Diego Pavia's New Mexico State team for the first time. Shane Beamer will not join Hugh Freeze. I don't think he will. I don't think South Carolina flexes in the way that some might assume and the way that some are hoping for in a standalone game for Lenora Sellers. The building offseason love fest for Lenora Sellers, which I think is very justified when you actually watch him play. I think there are going to be a lot of people that tune in that are kind of like, I was hoping for something a little bit more. Kind of similar to how they felt watching him against Illinois in the bowl game, where you're like, this isn't really the performance that I was expecting from somebody that I've heard so much about over the course of the last couple months. I think if you're expecting a dazzling Lenora Sellers performance, I would remind you that it's his first game with a new offensive coordinator.
Who's that, Connor?
One Mike Shula. Yes, we mustn't forget that. That is a thing. We'll get reminders of that, I think, throughout this game. He's facing an opportunistic defense as well. I love that Rasul Faison, the guy that we brought up earlier, finally eligible from the NCAA. I love that he's going to be playing this one. Big day for the Utah State transfer. I think South Carolina shakes off a little bit of a slow start, and I think they ultimately win this one 24-20. I think that would qualify as a low-scoring college game.
Yeah, I think, last year we kind of talked about 2024 South Carolina was an all-time fascinating team. I think we did cover them properly. And, a lot of the beat reporters, like I talked about when I saw them at media, they were like, hey, don't forget about that Old Dominion game to start the year. Like, there was reason to doubt this team early, as much as like we pretend like, oh, we got cool take. Like, they obviously got rolling after that. But I think that hopefully we have moved past that. And I think that, the two quarterbacks that I think like my first and second team all SEC for the preseason were Nussmeier and Sellers, right? And I think both of those guys, as we just talked about, Nussmeier's hold such an amazing like load for their team. They're going to bear so much of the responsibility win or lose. And I think that Sellers has matured so much from being that kid, with the rec specs that came in. It was like, oh, well, you could have had KJ, if you remember all that. And it's like, that worked out great. They got super KJ in Lenora Sellers, and he took them to heights that were unimaginable. And so that being said, like, I think that he is now ready to kind of lead this program. And these are the types of games that, Beamer, I guess I gotta specify here. Shane Beamer has been a great big game coach. I feel like, it's hard to beat the bigger teams, at South Carolina. But when it comes to, he's had a lot of feathers in his cap when it comes to like bigger games. I think where he struggled has been some of the smaller games and the routine stuff. He's a little bit of a roller coaster guy that gets you really up for a big game like a Clemson, and then against an Old Dominion, you can kind of get a little bit like. I'm not going to say the guys weren't ready, but it's just they didn't approach it with the same intensity, obviously.
There's a little Pat Narduzzi there. There's a little bit of Pat Narduzzi.
It's actually it's like a Gen Z, not Gen Z, but like a Gen X Narduzzi, where it's like he seems more fun, so we don't see it that way. Yeah, that's a good point. But point being, I think that Sellers can be such a floor raiser when healthy, which got to keep him healthy. With the rushing, with the ability to avoid sacks, with the ability to like stretch the field. So that being said, these are the type of games that hopefully as a South Carolina fan, despite Mike Shula's best efforts, you'll be able to just chill out by halftime, have a couple extra beers, go, get your week started, go maybe put some chores on in the background. That's what we hope as SEC fans, is that our game is boring.
There was a shot in Any Given Saturday of Lenore Sellers out to dinner with his family, and his dad is just he's like got surf and turf or something like that. He's eating like a lobster tail or something like that. And he says, like a mouthful of food, he's like, best decision you could have made was coming here. Like, yeah, I would think Facts. That too if I were in that spot.
Yeah.
I hope, for the sake of wanting to see the best version of Lenore Sellers, that it doesn't feel like his surroundings are letting him down this year. It's my biggest concern. It's my only pushback with putting him in the Heisman Trophy conversation and saying that he's got this type of ceiling, because in a given day, absolutely, Lenore Sellers can be the best player in college football. I think that is very much all within his capabilities. I hope, for his sake, that we don't look back on this season and go, man, there were better situations for him. There could have been better situations, and we're doing the game in early November where we're like, hey, what would Lenore Sellers be doing with this offensive line or this group of receivers? I don't want that to be the case, because I do admire the loyalty that he made to South Carolina and the loyalty that South Carolina had to him when they could have said, let's go and get a KJ Jefferson. Let's go and get somebody that's more proven at this level, because that relationship could take this program to different places. And I do think that's so exciting to talk about. It's so rare for, obviously, South Carolina to have a returning quarterback like this, best returning quarterback that they've ever had in program history. And I hope that in week one, we're not going, oh boy, bad taste in our mouths. Those surroundings need to improve in a hurry, or else this might not be the best version of Lenore Sellers. Maybe a slow start. Ultimately, they should get in the win column in this one. All right, well, lock of the week. Let's start in a place that I need to go to more often. Washington, 21.5 point favorite against Colorado State. I've actually never been to Washington. I should go to Washington. Very far from where I currently live. I might as well just go to Europe at that point.
Went to the Redwoods this year. It was beautiful, man. You'd love it there. Yeah.
Yeah. Pacific Northwest. Need to give that place a little bit more time. I'll be honest with you. Death, taxes, the home team winning at Husky Stadium. Everybody just having a beautiful day on the water. Vibes are good. One of my favorite things to bring up with Washington, Will, undefeated in that building in the last 3 years. 20 consecutive wins in Husky Stadium, including all 6 games that they played there last year. Now, they went 0-7 away from there last year, but that doesn't matter for this. It does not matter. Yeah. Season opening game, a lot of hype for Damon Williams. Kind of one of these dark horse Heisman candidates that's getting a lot of love. People really intrigued with what he's going to look like. Just like year 2 Noah Fafita with Jed Fish, a player that was one of my favorite quarterbacks of the 2020s so far. I think we're going to see this dude just absolutely sling it all over the yard. And it's going to turn into a sneaky, fun offense to watch against Colorado State defense that ranks 119th in the country in percentage of returning defensive production after it allowed 40 points in its an average of 40 points in its 2 power conference games last year, Colorado and Texas. Blowout win coming for the emerging Big Ten offense. That's right. Emerging Big Ten offense. That's Washington. This is going to feel like Pac-12 after dark, though, because it's 11 o'clock start. So if you're one of those people that's like, hey, Connor, lock of the week. I know you let me down last year, but I need to get it all back at 11 o'clock. Washington, Damon Williams, have yourself some fun with that 21.5 point spread.
Just like Washington on the road, that's irrelevant. That's ancient history. So we're starting off 0-0, and yeah.
Love it. That was fun. God, it's good to get back to talking about some games, Will. It's good to
Fired
get
up,
back to
man.
doing it. Love it.
Yeah.
Let's kick it to Kevin Clark. For those who have followed Kevin at The Ringer and now at ESPN, you know that he has just such vast football knowledge. So smart, especially the dynamics that are at play in the state of Florida. He grew up in the Sunshine State, so he obviously knows that very, very well. And he's a Miami grad, so we talk a lot about that as well ahead of the opener against Notre Dame. So here is Kevin Clark. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Kevin Clark, host of This Is Football for ESPN Omaha Productions. Kevin, I want to talk a bunch of Miami stuff with you, big
Yeah.
picture college football, but let's start with something equally important. My wife pre-ordered a Paolo jersey in the
There we
Magic,
go.
the new slash like old white pinstripe. Have you, as probably the most noteworthy Orlando Magic fan in existence right now, have you made that purchase yet?
No, I honestly have to figure out my sizing on it. I don't know. One thing that is keeping my bank account flush is that I don't actually know what size I am in jersey. And this goes for I almost bought every color of Cam Ward jersey last year, but I didn't know what size I wore. And it's the same now with these new Nike basketball jerseys where like I'd have to try it on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to Florida in the fall and there's a team store down there and I'm going to go to the Orlando Magic team store and I'm just going to try on everything and I'm going to buy all three jerseys and possibly all three shorts. Like I don't think I'm ever going to wear the shorts and the jersey together,
Don't.
but
Yeah.
I won't, but I would like to mix and match. You never know when you're going to need it. You never know.
This is true. This is exactly where I'm going to be going to pick it up. It's from the team store, like right there. Because you're right.
I
The
go
sizing's a little
there.
weird.
It's walking distance from my parents' house, and every time I'm there, I walk there and I just buy like $400 worth of stuff, and then go back and carry the little bag. And I never need any of it, but I want it all, and that's important.
I'm convinced that
I want to. I've never told this story publicly. When I was like 8 or whatever, my dad let me and my brother get one jersey each, and so I got a black Shaq jersey. My brother got a black Penny jersey, and then the blue jerseys came out. And all I wanted was that blue jersey. I wanted the blue jersey so bad. If you remember those blue pinstripe jerseys, like I was going to die if I didn't get a blue jersey. My dad was like, "You already got your jersey. There will be no second jersey." Okay. So for like 20 years, all I wanted was this blue jersey. And then, so when I got a job when I was 22, I started working at the Wall Street Journal, moved to New York. The first adult purchase I ever made was a blue Penny Hardaway jersey. And I think I wore it like once, but the point is I got it.
you have it, and that's all that
I
matters.
have it.
That's the key distinction because I'm in the same territory as you. Like I now I'm at the place where I buy jerseys. Like I bought a Saquon jersey. I love
Yeah.
Saquon on the Giants. It was at a garage sale for $20, but it was double XL. I'm like, all right, I'll spend the 50, $60
Why
to
not?
get fitted, and then I don't have to worry about sizing or anything like that. It fits great. Of course, Saquon then goes to the Eagles, and the rest is history. But I had a blue Horace Grant jersey. And I loved
Incredible.
that thing growing up, man. Like I wore that in kindergarten, first grade, and it was fire. And I'm upset
That is
to this
incredible.
day that I don't have it anymore.
Just eBay, baby. The great equalizer.
That's what I should do. It's a good call. Okay, so we'll tie this to college football. I'm convinced
Yeah.
that the Magic will now get back to looking like who they were in the 90s with these new jerseys. And I've said forever, it's going to be, you're not going to like this take. I'm going to just let you know right now. I'm convinced that Miami's 2000s uniforms, early 2000s,
Yeah.
I think that they're overrated. And I think that the context of their dominance defines more of those uniforms than the actual look itself. Like if you just saw the jersey without knowing,
Yeah.
like if you were from Europe and just saw the jersey, you'd say that's an ugly jersey. As a Miami grad, how much do you disagree with that take? And do I need to just kind of can it when it comes to early 2000s
No,
Miami?
well, I think you're not totally off. Like the aesthetics of those jerseys, the Miami jerseys, are not like don't blow your doors off. But I think there's a couple things. Number one is the Patriots jerseys. Everybody agrees are way cooler with Pat Patriot or even like the Flying Elvis in the 90s. And yet they're never going to change them because of how cool the uniforms look with Brady. The other one is, and I've thought about this a lot, the Eagles, everybody loves those Kelly Greens, right? But they stunk for the most part in Kelly Greens. And then they got Andy Reid, and then they got Jeffrey Lurie, and they got Howie Roseman, and they got all these, and Donovan McNabb, and they changed the entire culture of the franchise. And they're wearing those darker greens. And guess what? The darker greens suggest winning, even though they're not the best jersey. So I think you can win so much that you make a jersey cool. I don't think aesthetics necessarily matter, right? Like I don't think the Yankees have like a cool aesthetic jersey. It's just a pinstripe with an N and a Y on it. But you make it cool by winning. So I know what you're saying, but if they came out this year and wore the 01 jerseys for one game against uh I'm trying to get the home schedule, Louisville, like it would go crazy. It would be awesome.
I think that's fair. I think that's all fair. Let's get a vibe check on the opener of this Notre Dame game, and
Yeah,
I'm not going to ask you if you're going to wear a Catholics versus Convicts shirt for that one.
will
Probably,
not be.
probably not going to make the cut. Look, what is more likely for you? A flashback to the 2017 matchup with A-Rod and J-Lo up there in the
Yeah.
suite, like losing their minds,
Yeah.
or a flashback to the last time Miami was a preseason top 10 team and they opened 2018 by getting whooped by Joe Burrow LSU.
Yeah, so I thought about that LSU game a lot, and there's some people I know around the program where, and the answer is neither, by the way, but there's some people I know. Sorry, I mean, it's not going to be 41-8, and it's not going to be a massive Notre Dame win. So, um, there's some people around the program who were on the field before that Notre Dame game. Sorry, that LSU game, and they, like everybody, thought off that great 2017 season, and Mark Richt has them ready to go, and they professionalized the recruiting operation. They were getting South Florida kids again. They thought, here come the Canes. And then they got there in Dallas where the game was, and they saw the two teams warming up, and they realized that the LSU trenches were like massive NFL players, and Miami didn't have that. Miami had skill guys, and they had running backs, and they had DBs, and they had safeties. They didn't have the trenches. They didn't have NFL body types. I think the one thing Mario Cristobal has been able to do is get NFL body types everywhere, where that's Maui Noah on the offensive line, where that's Nez Cooper on the offensive line, where that's Ruben Bain, where that's Akeem Mesidor has come back for his fifth or sixth year, who battled injuries a couple of years ago, and it was extremely productive last year. Justin Scott, defensive tackle, 5-star. Armando Blunt, 5-star. Like, size is never going to be an issue again with Miami. NFL body types are never going to be an issue again with Miami. I think this is going to be an epic game. I think it's going to be an epic game. And I think that the teams, I've been surprised. It's funny because Notre Dame's a 2-point favorite or 2.5-point favorite, depending on the book you look at. I'm surprised at the way Notre Dame fans are looking past this is not the right phrase. They're hand waving this game. And they're saying, we're returning an incredible defense. CJ Carr is not going to matter that much. I think that there's been a dismissal of how many NFL guys are on Miami, of Carson Beck. I mean, I think, and again, I'm not saying Miami's going to win by 20 points. I'll get to that in a second. But like Carson Beck, there people are branding as Nathan Peterman 2.0, which is just not the case. He's playing a lot of big games, and he's whether or not Georgia had better players in the offensive line doesn't matter to me. They struggled last year to have an identity and to develop a run game and all that stuff. And I do think that there are parts where Miami's offensive line is going to be better. And I think that, like, I saw a Notre Dame writer a couple of weeks ago say he struggles to see Notre Dame losing this game unless Notre Dame implodes, which I think is only true of two programs in the last 15 years. One is Saban, Alabama, and the other is Kirby, Georgia. It's not Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame. It's not Brian Kelly, LSU. It's not even Kalen DeBoer, Alabama. Like, I think they're a normal, good, same with Miami, a normal, good college football program, which means they have the capability to melt on the road. They have the capability to go out and make a statement. But the idea that this is anything more than a coin flip game to me is a bit strange. I think it's a true coin flip game. I think that, some of the defensive players on Notre Dame are really good. Obviously, they're going to have even after losing Benjamin Morrison, they have Leonard Moore, who's going to be a first-round pick at cornerback. We'll see about the defensive line. There's some projection there, but obviously they really like Bryce Young as an example, a guy who didn't play a ton last year because of the depth on the defensive line. And so I think that, and then Traore, who I think was hurt last year after 5 games. But I think it's a coin flip game. I think that Miami's roster is much better than people think. And I also think that I think the most important thing in college football right now is something that Rick Pitino actually said, where he said on Pardon My Take last year, he said that college basketball is like European basketball now, where everybody's on 1-year deals and it's a year-to-year sport. And I think we've started to overrate continuity, where we say, okay, this guy was a sophomore, he'll be a junior now, he's going to be much better. What Miami's been able to do is they had an awful, awful, awful defense. They had the worst defense I've ever seen last year at the college for a legitimately good team. I think maybe the first LSU Jaden
23
Daniels
LSU
run.
was up
yeah,
there.
23 LSU. Some of those Oklahoma teams, some of those USC teams would be up there, but they couldn't. I was at the game, the Syracuse game, and Trevor Pena, it was 21-14 Miami, and they started the second half. Kyle McCord hit Trevor Pena for a 50-yard pass, and the next pass, he just threw the ball up, and it was right in front of us, and everybody stood up because it was going to be a corner of the end zone ball, and I just didn't even stand up because I was like, this is going to be a touchdown, because I don't even know who's in coverage. I think it was like Daryl Porter or something, but it's going to be, we have no capability of stopping a pass that is thrown in bounds. Literally, if it is thrown in bounds, it's going to be a touchdown. And so, like, I've never seen a defense like that. They went out and they got basically 5 new starters on the secondary. Okay. And that's important to note. They have essentially, even though some of the names are the same, because they have some guys who are still in the rotation, they essentially brought back 3 guys from that defense and got a new defensive coordinator. And so, to me, year-to-year league, the defense is going to be above average. And so you don't need much from the offense. You need better receivers. Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle are really good running backs. The offensive line is going to be good. So I think this is a true coin flip game, and I'm surprised at some of the Notre Dame folks who are hand waving it.
What's a fair expectation for Carson Beck? Because there's Cam Ward, and then there's the 20 years of Miami quarterbacks that preceded him.
Again, for me, it's different because they did not have NFL guys before Mario Cristobal. If they had an NFL guy, it was an accident. And I'm not even talking about quarterbacks. I'm talking about anywhere. If they had NFL guys, it was an accident because they were not recruiting at a high level. They weren't. They were letting everybody else. They were letting Jimbo Fisher in to take anybody he wanted from Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Urban Meyer coming in and taking anybody he wanted from Palm Beach County. Saban, I mean, Lord, hell, I just interviewed Patrick Surtain Jr. Last week, and we were talking about Miami. Sorry, we were talking about football, just football in general. And he said the best player he played with the biggest badass he played with in high school was Nesta Jade Silvera, who was his teammate and ended up in Miami. Best player he'd ever seen was Sam Bruce, who went to Miami, got in some off the field trouble, and has unfortunately passed away. And I'm sitting there, and all he's talking about is the Canes. He's not sitting there talking about Alabama. He's talking about the Canes. And yet, Patrick Surtain, too, never considered Miami. Why? Because they weren't serious about football back then. They just weren't. And that's true of Jerry Jeudy. That's true of Calvin Ridley. That's true of everybody. Dalvin Cook, like all those guys. If you were serious about football, you went elsewhere. And so that's a roundabout way to answer your question, which is that I don't think any of those. The reason Miami didn't try at football for 20 years is because the 20 years before that had taught them that football was easy, because it was, we lost Howard Schnellenberger. We won with all these local recruits. Let's go get Jimmy Johnson, who was just okay at Oklahoma State. Built the best dynasty we've ever seen. Okay, we're going to go out and get Dennis Erickson, who was just okay in the Pacific Northwest. Won 2 national championships. All right, well, we're down, and we're going to get Butch Davis, who's an assistant coach. We'll see how it goes. Surprise, built the best team of the decade. And they didn't spend money. They didn't spend on facilities. They didn't spend on anything. And it was taught that football was easy. So they kept that mentality as football changed around them. And then for 20 years, they've been struggling to catch up. Now they've caught up. So to answer your question about Beck, which was a long time ago, um, to me, it's going to be this for a while. It's going to be bringing in top of the line portal guys. And if you're asking me what the difference is going to be, Cam Ward might be my favorite quarterback I've ever watched in my entire life, like at the college level. He was amazing. Any mistake he made was almost a bit, right? Like it was almost him throwing across his body and being like, eh. And like even there was I think about this a lot, where Virginia Tech, it was like a gotta have it, third down, and he just completely sailed it out of bounds. And as soon as it left his hand, he just like gave the receiver a thumbs up, like, all right, let's do it again, and then did it again on an ACC defense. And I've never seen anything like it. What's Carson Beck going to do? The reason that Miami lost to Georgia Tech last year was because Elijah Arroyo was running cardio out there, wide open. And he hit him on the first play of the game or the first drive of the game for a 70-yard touchdown. And then it wasn't like Arroyo got less open as the game went on, but Cam Ward loved hitting Jacoby George for 50-yard bombs. He loved hitting Xavier Restrepo for 27-yard chunk plays. And I think Carson Beck, you're going to see more of those checkdowns. You're going to see more of let's use the tight ends, let's use the screen game, let's use the running back. And so it might be a situation where it's less explosive. Excuse me. It will be a situation where it's less explosive. That was the most explosive offense this side of Jaden Daniels or Joe Burrow. But I think you're going to see a more well-rounded isn't even the term, but you're going to see Mark Fletcher and you're going to see Jordan Lyle a lot. You're going to see Shamar Brown, who's the won the FCS freshman of the year. FCS. I was confused FBS and FCS. He was North Dakota State last year. He won the freshman of the year award. He's going to be the third running back. You're going to see more of a power game. You're going to see more of all of that. And so it's going to be a drop off. Absolutely. But I don't think it's fatal. I think they can make the playoff with Carson Beck.
Would Carson Beck have been picked before Shedeur Sanders if he had gone to the NFL draft?
Because of the injury, I don't know.
Right?
I mean, Quinn Ewers was a 6th-round pick. I think Beck's better than Ewers. He probably would have been. I mean, Dylan Gabriel was a 3rd-round pick. It depends on the interviews. The problem with the thing is Dylan Gabriel, he's not tall enough to play in the NFL. He's not very good. But from what I understand, the reason he was picked was because he marketed himself as, hey, I want to be a good guy in the quarterback room. I want to be the guy who's getting helping the starter every week, that kind of thing. And guys wanted him in their building, and that's why you end up a 3rd-round pick. So with Beck, it would have come down to something like that. So having not gone through the process, I guess he'd probably be a 3rd or 4th-round pick as long as he didn't completely bomb the interview. But then again, so would Shedeur Sanders. Like Shedeur Sanders, who didn't bomb the interview, would have gone a lot higher. So it's hard to say. Ewers is not exactly lighting it up in Miami. So probably, I'm going to guess yes.
I think the 2020s in college football have been defined by two things, and they're kind of contradictory, but they're similar in some ways. Like it's coaches who have gotten over the hump, like Kirby Smart, Jim Harbaugh, Ryan Day, and then coaches who have let elite quarterbacks down, like Lincoln Riley with Caleb Williams in 22, Brian Kelly with Jaden Daniels in 23, and then last year, Mario Cristobal with Cam Ward. For the time being, do you put him in that category? Like, are you looking back at 2024 as, man, this missed opportunity? Because even looking back at the schedule today, I'm like, dang, they didn't have to beat a ranked team to get to that point in the season. Just beat that game that you were at. And that's what's so devastating about walking out of that building that day.
Yeah, it sucked. It really sucked. But I think you have to look at it on the flip side. For as much as Cam Ward helped Miami last year, Miami helped Cam Ward. Miami took a 4th-round, 5th-round pick and made it the first overall pick. And I think, there's he had a funny line after Cal, maybe. It was one of those late night games where he said, this is the easiest job in America. Like you just come here and you hand it off to great running backs, play behind an offensive line, and you go. And he was hooking up the team. He was obviously a lot better than what he's describing. But I do think there's an element of that is that Mario, if Cam Ward had come to a Manny Diaz team, Cam Ward would not have been the first overall pick. He would have been throwing to a bunch of 3 stars from Palm Beach or bust 4 stars. It wouldn't have worked. They would have gotten their doors blown off. They would have lost to the Gators by 25 points in week 1 last year. Maybe not 25, but enough. And so I think there's an element of Mario raising the floor, but yeah, he's got to get over the hump. I don't think I think his talent, I will trust him at all times on talent acquisition. The only thing last year was going into the year with the defensive backs they had. So no, I don't expect anybody to follow Miami that closely. And God bless you if you do. But please don't. But week 1 in Gainesville, they lost Ruben Bain for 5 or 6 weeks, and they lost Damari Brown, who didn't play again until Syracuse. And they probably rushed back. I saw him. Damari Brown was probably the best freshman guy in the secondary the year before. And so the depth gets hurt already. They don't have a nickel back. They started to regroup a little bit. But the fact of the matter is they had 2 of the worst safeties I've ever seen in my entire life. And Jaden Harris, one who's I think going to play some special teams roles at Georgia. I don't think. Let me put it this way: if Jaden Harris plays safety for Georgia, I'm shorting Georgia, but I don't think that's going to happen. And then Mish Powell, who I saw was just cut from the Vikings. That to me was the fatal flaw last year. It was a personnel decision, and then Lance Guidry, who went from James Williams and Cam Kitchens, who were 2 NFL safeties, he goes to those 2. He doesn't have the horses, and then any issue could have been resolved by Ruben Bain being a demon, but he was hurt the entire year, right? And so everything cascaded from there, and all of a sudden you get to 2 losses in the regular season. It was heartbreaking. It sucked, but I don't think that. I think Mario Cristobal has increased his wins total every single year that he's been there. And I think that Marcus Freeman's done that. I think Dan Lanning has done that. I don't think anybody else has. And I think that there's a reason for that. And that's he's building the talent level. And I think at Miami, that's all you got to do. You needed a demon recruiter to start the rebuild. And I think he's done that. And I don't, I think every great recruiter, with the exception of Nick Saban, is overrated as a game day coach. I don't think there's a lot of tacticians out there who are also really good recruiters. I just don't. And so, yeah, there's no 2 ways about it. You can't put him in the got over the hump category that you described because he hasn't gotten over the hump. So yeah, it's pretty easy. He's got to get over the hump. And I don't know if it's this year as far as what would you consider getting over the hump, getting to the national championship game or winning it or
getting to the playoff. Getting in the playoff, and even just getting to the ACC championship would be getting over the hump for Miami.
I think they'll do that this year. I think they'll do that this year. But I also think I think it would be a disappointment if the way they recruit and the way they spend and all that stuff, if Mario Cristobal leaves Miami and has not at least played for a national title. We're talking about over a 12-year period, 13-year period, whatever that may be. I have no idea. It might be 20 years. He's only in his 50s. But I think that the way it's set up, where you're in at minimum a top 3 recruiting ground in the world, players still want to play for you, despite the fact that there was a malaise for 2 decades with recruiting. That Manny didn't want these guys. Manny wasn't recruiting these guys hard. Al Golden wasn't recruiting these guys hard. Randy Shannon wasn't recruiting these guys hard. There was a malaise for 20 years. Players still want to play there. They spend in the portal. They spend in an NIL, and they should have a pretty easy path to the playoff every year because of the way the ACC is set up, where you basically, let's say, with the way the divisions are set up, I mean, if they had gotten to the ACC title game last year and lost to SMU, they still probably would have made the playoff. And since SMU did.
Right.
And I think that even if they make it this year against Clemson, they'll probably get in, unless they lose to both Notre Dame and Florida, in which case that they'd be probably on the bubble. But regardless, if they make Charlotte, 70% of the time in the next decade, yeah, that should get them at some point into a year where they're able to win 3 playoff games.
Okay, can I give you a depressing Miami stat? Because did you go to Miami? Did you start 2006 or 2007?
7.
Okay, so this is a 2006 stat. So since 2006, Miami started as a top 15 team in the AP poll 4 times. It
Hmm.
finished unranked all 4 times, and it won exactly 7 games and fired its coach all 4 times. This year, Miami preseason number 10. So the good news and why this could actually be a positive,
Yeah.
if Mario Cristobal simply wins 8 games and survives, is that good enough to be considered a positive Miami season, or at least like some sort of progress has been made? Because that's wild, and I didn't even realize that, but I kind of memory hold that of any time that Miami has expectations, usually it just ends in pain and suffering and moving on to the next guy.
Yeah. So Mario's not going to lose his job. But everything that happened there, there was an event, right? So like Al Golden lost because he lost to Clemson, got fired because he lost to Clemson 58-0. Um, Randy Shannon lost to USF, which you can't be doing. All love to my USF Bull brothers and sisters, but we can't be doing that. We can't be losing to USF. Okay. Um, Manny, I don't even know if we were ranked to begin that season, but like he lost to an awful FSU team. He lost to the 2021 FSU team, which we can't be doing. He'd already lost to Michigan State. He got boat raced by Alabama, which was acceptable back then. But there was always an event there. I think because of kind of what I'm talking about with the NFL bodies and stuff like that, I think that's been removed. I think that the ability to lose to, I'm trying to think of who's awful on our schedule. We play Stanford at home. You can't be losing to Stanford. And I think that you remove all doubt when you have Ruben Bain and the 5 stars I discussed and Carson Beck and the offensive line. You're not going to lose to Stanford. And so I think he's going to win 8 games. I think that they went undefeated at home last year, which is a sign typically of a competent program. And I just didn't they didn't lay an egg last year. They really didn't. And I think that we were always, like that the USF game, they started really slow. The first quarter and a half was a raucous crowd in Tampa. They won 50-15. Jordan Lyle had like a 97-yard touchdown run. They were able to navigate that. And so I don't I just think the way the talent acquisition has worked the last couple of years, both in the portal and high school recruiting, I just don't see a scenario in which they have those kind of pitfalls. And I was super honest. I had people from the athletic department being like, "Why are you tweeting the stuff you're tweeting about Manny Diaz?" It's like because he's not a serious coach. Like I'm
Hater.
a,
I love Manny.
I'm
He was on the show a couple months ago, and I love Manny Diaz. So I'm hearing this, and I'm
I'm
going,
sure he's a
dang, man,
great
this
guy.
this hurts.
I'm sure he's a great guy. But it was funny when I started talking about Cam Ward being the first overall pick, which was last fall. People were saying to me, "Well, you're just a Miami homer," and I was like, "Man, nobody's hated watching Miami more than me the last 20 years because I know what the standard is, and I know what it should be, and I know how, frankly, how easy it should be. Kind of what we were talking about earlier, but like, you should be able to, like, I remember my first year, Randy Shannon was there. T.Y. Hilton's across town at FIU, and we took Theron Collier over him. And Theron Collier is returning kicks and doing all this stuff, and he stinks. And it's like, once you see that, you go, oh, okay, we have no idea what we're doing. And recruiting in Miami, I used to joke, and this is one of the tweets I sent, like, when Manny got fired, he was like 67th in recruiting for that cycle. And it's like me and Mike Ryan from the Le Batard show could rent a Hertz and just like run around Miami high schools with a sign up sheet and get better players in the 67th ranked class nationally. Like truly, like they used to say about Mac Brown, you don't recruit at Texas, you just put out a sign up sheet. Like Miami should be that sort of job. And there was a complete dereliction of duty the last 2 decades. And now Mario's changed that. And I think that's what you're seeing different now.
Do you think that describes all 3 of the big Florida schools, really the last 15 years? Because from
Yeah.
87 to 2008, the time that you grew up in this state, like every year it felt like one of the Florida teams is going to be competing for a national championship. 9 national championship winners in that stretch. And since then, there's only been one. And I think you could point to all three and go, man, why didn't you guys upgrade the facilities? Was it just as simple? Like, is your explanation
Yeah.
just simply recruiting was too easy for those schools, and that's why they're in this position now?
No. It's a little more nuanced than that. So Larry Bluestein, do you know Larry Bluestein? He's like the
Mm,
legend of Miami recruiting. He's been covering her for 50 years. He knows everybody, great on evals, all that stuff. I think he has his own deal, but he's worked for some of the newspapers down there. I remember calling him for something a couple years ago, and he said that he realized things were changing when he went to the St. Thomas Aquinas spring game in like 2006, let's call it 2007. And you know St. Thomas Aquinas, where Michael Irvin went, it's where Joey Bosa went. It's
James
half
White.
of half of the SEC went to St. Thomas Aquinas. Okay, and and so I think they were just on ESPN over the weekend, if I'm mistaken. I think they may have lost. So get that out of your mind before I tell this anecdote. But he said he used to go to St. Thomas's spring game, and there'd be five Miami coaches there, and then like a Florida State guy if they had a huge prospect that they were in on, and that was it. It was a spring game. Then you go in 2007, and there's like 50 coaches there, and it's UConn, and it's Louisville, and it's Michigan State, and it's all of these schools, and it just became more of a dogfight, and you get spread too thin, and you get certain guys. I mean, the best example of this is Lamar Jackson. I mean, Lamar Jackson is so all three schools get in late on Lamar Jackson. He's in Palm Beach County. If you were born 10 years earlier, again, you'd be deciding between three schools: Florida, Florida State, and Miami. That's it. There was no Louisville. And then Louisville says, we're going to put you in this system. They recruited him the entire time, and he stayed loyal to them. He did not want to budge. And there's also the stories about who he would have picked. I just love that cope. Oh, who would he have picked if he picked one of the big three? People say Florida State more than anything. I don't know. It doesn't matter. He didn't. And and so I think that's more indicative of what just happened, where Florida recruiting became national. And I know a guy who's more tapped into the recruiting that was like, if some of these schools, they'll just go down and offer a guy just to say they offered a guy from Fort Lauderdale, just to say, hey, we have 20 offers out to guys in Fort Lauderdale. And the problem is that, again, if you're Miami now, it takes a lot longer to close on a slot receiver from St. Thomas Aquinas than it did 20 years ago. So you're using those resources. And then the other part of it is you just can't pick up the phone and say, hey, come. Some of these guys might be like, actually, I love what Minnesota's telling me. I love what Rutgers is telling me. And so, I remember I worked one year with Ryan Shazier at the Ringer, and Shazier was from Fort Lauderdale. And I remember it was like a freak show when he went to Ohio State. It was like, what? You're doing what? No, 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 no. You're a 5-star, high 4-star linebacker, whatever it was. You're from Fort Lauderdale. You don't go to Ohio State. Like I think Chris Gamble had gone there, but like that wasn't a thing people did. You decided between three schools, and then it just started to change. Patrick Johnson, who became Patrick Peterson, went to LSU in 2007. That seemed like a freak occurrence. Teddy Bridgewater was committed to Miami. They fired Randy Shannon. He went to Louisville. That seemed like a freak occurrence. And then all of a sudden, it just became normal. And part of that's coaching. Urban was not letting guys out of the state. Okay. Butch was not letting guys out of the state. Bobby Bowden was not letting guys out of the state until very late in his tenure there. And then Jimbo kind of changed that a little bit. But Jimbo also had his SEC connections from, getting Jalen Ramsey from Tennessee and stuff. So it was a little bit different. But he was still getting guys from South Florida, Dalvin Cook being a good example. But I just feel like South Florida, if I'm not, so IMG changes a little bit, where like the top 10 players in Florida, it used to be just Florida, Florida State, Miami. Then IMG came in. And so now
It's messy with that.
yeah, the rankings are different because IMG is there. But if I'm not mistaken, of the top 10 players in Florida right now, I think only Florida State has one of the top 10 guys, and it's the kid from it's the cornerback. I think his name's Chauncey Kenyon from Tampa, or the West Coast of Florida. That's telling you all that needs to be told. Is like that Texas has, I think Texas has Dia Bell, James Johnson, and Derek Cooper who are all top 10 in the state of Florida, Texas. And so it's become a more national thing. And it's not up to Texas is not going to sign a non-aggression pact, right? It's up to Mario and Billy Napier and Mike Norvell. And I'm going to go ahead and exclude Mike Norvell from that because he's not probably not going to go out, just track record, go out and get a Derek Cooper. But I the ground shifted beneath everybody's feet, and I think that it took a long time for the schools to realize how much recruiting had changed. And this is, by the way, before NIL. This is when Saban starts to come in, and then Kirby starts to come in. Kirby goes and gets Jalen Carter out of Orlando, out of Apopka. Like it became a thing. Another example, actually, Keith Rivers is from Orlando and went to USC. That was another guy who was like, "What the hell? Like, how are you going to USC? Why aren't you a Gator?" But it just we're in a situation now where the recruiting ground is more up for grabs than it ever has been. Having said that, I've always said Miami needed one of two things. They either needed a demon recruiter or the best talent evaluator in the world. Because there are so many of these guys. I mentioned T.Y. Hilton earlier, but like, do you know the famous Miami Northwestern class? Do you know about they took 7 guys? Have you heard the story?
Mm-mm.
So Miami had the number 1 class, although weirdly it says number 2 class. I saw a graphic the other day. It said we were number 2. I think there was someone cooked the books there. But anyway, 2008 recruiting class, Ja'Cory Harris, all those guys. It was at least the second best recruiting class in the country. And they took 7 guys from Miami Northwestern High School. So it was Ja'Cory Harris, Tommy Streeter, Aldarius Johnson, Brandon Washington, and all those guys. Okay. Sean Spence, who made it to the NFL, was a linebacker on that team. The one guy, the one Division I prospect from that class they did not take was Levante David.
That's impossible.
And so he went to
Nebraska doesn't get anybody nationally now in the way that they did.
He committed to Middle Tennessee State, and then he decommitted, went to JUCO, and then went to Nebraska.
Right.
But at no point did he go to University of Miami. Is the point. And that to me is also the story where it's like, even if you don't want to be a demon recruiter, even if you don't want to outspend Texas for James Johnson and Derek Cooper and Diabell, there's NFL players everywhere, everywhere. And if you can just go out there and identify them, I think that Miami's done a pretty good job of this. But if you can go out there and identify them, you can be a national contender. You may not win the national championship because you're not getting the NFL bodies necessarily, but like you can go out and you can get 4 or 5 NFL guys per year just by knowing who you're supposed to be looking at. I'll give you a good example. Stanquan Clark at Louisville, who starts for them for linebacker. I remember all of the recruiting guys who were in South Florida who go to the high school games were like Stanquan Clark, one of the best linebackers in Miami. None of the big 3 took him. He's at Louisville now, and he's threatening to be all ACC this year. I think he was honorable mention last year. But like, just going to high school games and knowing who's good and who's bad is a really, really good competitive advantage, because I think sometimes the recruiting rankings are, broadly speaking, very good, but they can miss guys, especially in South Florida, where it's basically impossible to rank them unless you have boots on the ground every single week.
Last one for you. And I know you've been all over the place with NFL training camps and whatnot.
Yeah.
Surely every team that you visited told you their strategy of how they're going to tank to get Arch Manning. Have you heard a single person in the NFL, like the non-NFL draft circles, talk about Arch Manning at all? And maybe the better question is, have you ever seen an example of a guy that's played so little college football that's already being discussed so much by people, at least around the NFL?
Jim Clausen?
Man, even that.
I don't remember this. I was too young. Do you know that Beano Cook guaranteed that Ron Powlus was going to win multiple Heismans at Notre Dame? My mom used to bring that up all the time. That was a big one. When he committed on whatever it was, signing day, would have been 1991, 1992. All right, so that's Notre Dame bucket. No, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of some of the guys where they get. I mean, Dylan Raiola had a lot of hype, but not like Arch Manning. Arch Manning is one of one. To answer your question,
Yeah.
Arch Manning is one of one. I've never seen anything like this. And I think it's a mixture of pedigree. I think it's a mixture of just the tape. We had Gino Cooper Patagna from 24/7. He's really
Mm-mm.
good. He's a ex personnel guy, and he works for 24/7. He does a lot of the evals. And I asked him, he was on my show a couple years ago, and I said, what's the best tape you've ever seen? And he said that as a freshman high school player, Arch Manning had the best freshman tape he's ever seen his entire life. And I think because of just how much the athleticism jumps off the tape. It's really hard. The athleticism part of it is huge because it's really hard to judge a pocket passer in high school. Like I was watching CJ Carr highlights the other day that just popped up on Twitter, and it's like, okay, he does look good, but he's also cooking kids from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I have no idea if they're good or not. This happens all the time where I'll watch like a recruit from New Jersey, no shots in New Jersey, but it's like, okay, unless you're one of those 5 schools that are football factories, you might be playing against a guy who's going to play it. I actually don't want to name a D3 school. Okay. But but he might be playing somewhere in Maine. Right. And so it's really hard to gauge that when they're just cooking a defensive back. But for a guy like Arch, where he's also got, not only does he have the throws, he has like the 12-yard juke him out, scramble touchdowns type of deal that jumps off the page. And so jumps off the screen. And so I think it's out of the perfect storm, the pedigree, the name, the fact that his uncles watched so much film that they had to be great. I think we're assuming, and I'm assuming, that Arch has that same gene. I don't know Arch. I've never been around him. I know certainly members of his family. I work for some members of his family. Um, and so I think everyone is probably correctly assuming the floor on him is really, really, really high. And then you watch the tape and you go, oh, the ceiling's high too. And I think that's what we're seeing. From an NFL perspective, it's always, every time, it's not, conversations about quarterbacks in the draft a year out are not fake. Okay. They're not fake. But the people watching quarterbacks that early, it's almost for entertainment purposes only. It's almost just to see it, or they're big college fans or whatever. GMs will flick at it. Maybe they'll just, hey, we're just going to check this out. But there's no real serious work being done until later in the process. And sometimes the GMs don't even watch quarterbacks until after the entire season. It depends on their scouting background. And so I think everybody's withholding judgment until they see more. And maybe in a couple weeks, or actually it's this week, we might see him against Ohio State and everything looks amazing. And he is going to be number one overall. I just think it's really early for anything, any sort of proclamations on what that looks like.
So to answer your question, no, teams are not going to be sitting there tanking. Talking about that in training camp.
I think there's a lot.
Speculated.
I think there's a lot of possibilities. I think Nussmeier is a possibility to go really high. I think Lenora Sellers, I'd like to see. I love Lenora Sellers. I've talked about him on TV a lot. I'd love to see him keep his eyes downfield more. One thing that they're different players, but like one thing Cam Ward was awesome at is he really only ran the ball out of almost frustration, almost like, really, you're going to make me run the ball. I think that's a really good attribute for a quarterback to have, even if you do have the athleticism to scramble. Lenora Sellers, to me, he needs to keep his eyes downfield, and when plays start to go, he just takes off. And there's some goodness around that at the college level, but at the NFL level, I'd like to see him reset his feet and try to hit somebody for 30 yards. That's all. That's my one.
I think he does
critique.
that. I think his receiver room is not exactly
That's
get
possible.
open after the that's the
possible.
tougher part with his situation. Yeah,
That's possible. I was just watching with a couple of my colleagues, a couple of my quarterback colleagues, and we were looking at that earlier. And I would like to see more of that this year. Maybe he does. Also, you grow. This time last year, we were looking at Cam Ward highlights where he's at Washington State throwing the ball into the turf. That's the point of quarterback growth that I think that we overlook a lot, is that they get better because they actually work on the things that we talk about.
Yeah, agreed. It's going to be a fascinating conversation, the 2026 quarterbacks, and maybe Carson Beck's going to be a part of that. I'm sure he's going to be a topic of conversation.
Bruce Feldman thinks he is.
That's all you need. If he's got the freaks list, Bruce has the best intel on all that stuff getting ahead of it. So
Bruce is right on a lot. Bruce is really high on Carson Beck. I just think he just needs to take care of the ball and just get the ball in the hands of the playmakers. And one thing about Miami that I'll leave you with this because I've talked too much about Miami. They've got a number of freshman receivers that I think are going to play really early. Malachi Tony being one, Josh Moore being the other. I think that it's going to be a better receiving group as the year goes on. And so for Carson, it's going to be about hitting like CJ Daniels and Keelan Marion and some of these portal guys early. Elijah Lofton, who's a sophomore tight end, who's really good. But then I think later in the year, I think you're going to see some of those young guys emerge.
Don't think there's anything wrong about that. Even for those like myself who are skeptical about the receiving room coming in, certainly could see it playing out well and playing out, a little bit better than it did
I'm
last year.
hugely skeptical of the receiver room this week.
Yeah.
Like this, where it's August 25th as we record, I am actively hugely skeptical, but I reserve the right to be impressed as the season goes along.
Definitely. Kevin, this has been great. Really, really appreciate the time. We're going to have to do this again, man.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Well, let's close with some lad of the week. You got one that's very near and dear. I got one that's kind of half serious. I should probably start, right? Okay. Cal Raleigh, a.k.a. Big Dumper. Best nickname going right now.
All time.
50 bombs as a catcher. First primary catcher to ever do it. Did it before the calendar even turned to September. Already became the first catcher to ever win the home run derby. I was talking to somebody about this not that long ago. I think it's one of the most remarkable athletic feats of the 21st century to do what he's doing. Like I truly do. This is a switch hitting catcher who last year won the Platinum Glove Award as the best defensive player in baseball. Not just winning a Gold Glove as a catcher, the best defensive player in baseball a year later to do what he's doing. I remember, like, anytime there's a good hitting catcher, it was, they kind of suck behind the plate. And Mike Piazza is not really good behind the plate. Okay, Pudge, probably the best of both worlds, ends up being a Hall of Famer, but was never this potent as a hitter, even with all the steroids in the world. This is someone who is doing something that is just remarkable. And I think we're going to be talking about decades from now. I truly do. Like, to one up the best defensive season that a player had in Major League Baseball by hitting 50 bombs like this, I'm just blown away. Like I was a high school catcher, couldn't hit for any power whatsoever. I still think about the doubles that I hit because they were so rare, but I was a 300 hitter. I could push the ball the other way. And to think of all the different things that a catcher endures and that Cal Raleigh is doing this at the major league level is just insane. I think if he breaks Aaron Judge's 62, I think we should crown him as the new home run champ, just so that we could say the non-steroid home run champ goes by the nickname Big Dumper. Like, baseball needs that. You want to talk about getting fun back in baseball.
Yep.
Big Dumper is your home run champ is the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? And, you never want to say a baseball player is totally clean, after our childhood and everything. But this is a guy, you look at his body type and you're like, I know where that power is coming from. This doesn't
Did you
feel
see
like
his brother? His brother's like 14 at the home run derby. You're like, that kid's in high school?
Yeah.
What?
It's like he's not on steroids and he's kind of built like this. And so it's like, it's not like guy has huge arms. It's like his whole body, he's just a tree trunk. And so it's so funny because we said, okay, baseball's dying. And it's like, here's this guy, Shohei Ohtani, comes out of nowhere. Oh my God, he's a pitcher and an MVP hitter. It's like, what more do you want? And people go, oh, he's not American. He's not relatable. He doesn't, speak English that well. He plays in LA. It's like, wait a minute, watch this. We have something that's just as crazy, I would argue, as far as playing defensive catcher and offensive hitter. And you're like this super relatable, chill, thick boy who's just like awesome, good old boy. It's like, okay, I see you, baseball. Like, after everybody had kind of buries you, it's like, this is the most fun from like a star standpoint I've had since I was a kid watching baseball. He's like, obviously for a guy like me, he's the tip of that. He's awesome.
Imagine a year in which Big Dumper and Schwarber both hitting 50 plus bombs, both win MVP. Shohei's probably going to win MVP in the NL, but how can Cal Raleigh not win MVP for a year like this in the AL? Gotta be, man. That talk about bringing me all the way back to baseball. That and a Cubs wild card victory, not just a wild card berth, a wild card victory. Those three things, that parlay has to hit. Then I'm all the way back into baseball.
Connor's back. Yeah. So from one Big Dumper to another, I started to open the show last time with this. I was just so freaking sad. My cat passed away, man. We had to put him down. My boy Walter, if you've been listening to the show, you know, I didn't want to like make it about me and start off the show and just talk about it, but I was a little bit out of it last show. So if you've stuck with it through here, I appreciate you. But yeah, I mean, my boy, like he was 20 years old.
20 years old.
20 years old.
20.
You know, I adopted him. He was 8. He was already like declawed. He was so scared when I adopted him. I was like, you know, shout out Deadspin. And I put this story on my like personal Facebook, but shout out Deadspin. I'll never forgive you, Hulk Hogan, for what you took from me. But Deadspin, I was in college and they put out this thing in conjunction with like an adoption service. And they said how to adopt a chill cat. And I was reading Deadspin like I did every day in college. And I was alone. I was in a new city and I went, I would like a chill cat. And it had like all these steps of like how you get a chill cat. Well, you want one that's about 6-8 months old, so you see his personality. You want X, Y, and Z. I had like a little like list that this is the type of cat I want when I went to the shelter. And then I saw Walter, and none of that mattered. He was 8 years old. He was so fat they thought he was pregnant when he came in. Literally, nobody wanted him. He was there for months. He was so scared of everyone. And I looked at him and I was like, you just like me, bro. You so thick. He was a Maine Coon. And so he was like 60, 20 pounds. He was this giant cat. And they literally told me, they're like, are you sure you want this cat? Like, you know, you already said you're kind of going through it. Like, this cat's 8 years old. He might not have long left. Like, he's declawed. Like, he might get arthritis. Like, are you sure? Like, you only gonna have this cat for a couple of years. And so I named him Walter to remind me that I wouldn't have him for very long. And then he just kept living. He just kept going at it. And there's pictures of him when he was young, I guess, 8 years old, and pictures of him just a couple of weeks ago. And he looks almost the same. He was just like this bulbous blob of fur. One of my exes, they called him bacteria because he just was a little ball. Like he had a small head, big body. He was so weird looking. He was mixed with something. I don't know what it was, but he was just such a classic shelter cat. And yeah, I came back from my parents' house and he just started acting weird. And, you know, I took him in. I said I was going to get an MRI, which was like, I was gonna put it on Klarna, bro. It was like $6,000-$8,000. I was ready to figure out what was wrong with my boy. They said it could be cancer or dementia. And then literally the next day, bro, he just started falling over. And I took him into the emergency vet, and they were like, "Hey, man, I'll tell you what this is right now. He has brain cancer." So it was really rough. But I am really thankful for the time I had with him. Like I said, you know, I didn't expect it to be as long as it was. So I can't have any regrets. He was the perfect pet for me. He was basically a house plant. He never destroyed anything. He was so low maintenance, and he made me feel like I wasn't, you know, alone with all the stuff I'd gone through and the moves and everything. So, you know, a little hole in the heart right now. Got some sad country going and everything. Feel bad for you if you play me in my NCAA football dynasty right now. I smoked a user last night by 50 points because I was just putting on some Luke Combs and just mowing down Oklahoma. So, yeah, I'm getting through it, but at least I got football to kind of think about. But shout out to my boy Walter, man. What a thick king.
When Will told me about this, and the entire time that I've known you, you've had Walter. He's been your buddy. He's been your go-to guy, and I've met him many a time. We've seen him in the background all the time, you know, wandering into the room and whatnot. And when you told me like, hey, you know, I got to put Walter down, and I for whatever reason did not process that he was 20. Like to me, that was, I was thinking like, has he lived to be like 11, 12 years old or something like that? Yeah. Cause I was thinking maybe you got him when he was a few months old. When you told me he was 20, I, in hindsight, was not, I should have made a bigger deal when he turned 20. I had no idea that you were living with a true miracle to be that old as a cat. And I realized like some cats like get there, but the fact that they told you, cause I remember like, when you find out they're adopting an animal, like they tell you all those different things as you're just talking about, like, yeah, he's got some issues. To live that long is insane, man. Is absolutely insane. It is awesome that you got the time with him. And, you know, I know he was your boy. We talk a lot about how much pet deaths are just, they're brutal. Like they suck. They're a part of your family. And there's just, it can be so difficult to like work through that. And do I replace him? Like, do I want to go through this pain again? Is always the first thing that you're thinking. That is such a unique situation to adopt a cat that's at that stage in life and to get him to be 20 years old. He was almost old enough to legally drink, man.
That's the thing that's so funny, bro. As I'll tell you, I was like a B- cat dad. Like that's like when I had met Andrea, she's like, oh, like I brush my cats every day. I change their litter every single day. I do this. They have all these toys. They have all these vitamins. And I'm like, yeah, Walter just kind of chills, man. He's got his litter. He doesn't really like treats. He has his food. He eats at the same time every day. it's super chill. Like I really don't have any secrets for any cat owners because he was just so cool and just happy to be anywhere. And in contrast to my other cat who also passed away, Boo, who you would often hear in the background like yowling, Walter never did any of that. He was, super chill. So yeah, he was perfect. That's the thing. I think it's going to be a long while before I get another cat because it's like, it's like having Drew Brees. It's like anybody after him, I'm going to compare to him. So I think I might need to just take a bit off and just kind of be me for a minute and then bring something else, whatever that would be. But yeah, man, appreciate all of the people that reached out and everything. I got flowers and everything, but we're getting through it.
Suggestion, larger cat, tiger, domesticate, probably not going to jive with the HOA.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not the best run of tigers thrown into situations that they're not comfortable being in, like the tiger last year against Alabama. But
Omar the tiger, yeah.
Omar, yeah.
Yeah.
His name wasn't even Mike. God, I hated that so much. Large cats, just it's been your vibe would make a lot of sense. Just saying, the options are there.
Yeah, I think actually if I do get another cat, I'm going to get the same kind you got, the Turkish van, because my second favorite cat is Andrea's cat, Sonny, and she let him stay with me for the last week, and he was just passed out. He's like, if Rudy didn't have that dog in him, he's got that sleep in him. Like the other day, I like slightly stepped on his tail. He didn't make any noise because he doesn't know what pain is. Like he's just the most soft. Like he has no concept of struggle. And like that's just one of those little chubby boys is what I need one around here. But one day, but yeah, I appreciate everything. I appreciate y'all dealing with me being a little bit slow on the draw.
You're good, man. We got football now.
We
got football. Week 1 is here. Gosh, thank you for rocking with us this offseason, or even if you're just more of an in-season listener, appreciate you coming on board. We're going to have a lot of great guests coming up. We were supposed to actually have another very noteworthy guest today, but he had to reschedule. Hopefully, we're going to be able to get that set up sometime early in September, so be on the lookout for that. We're going to be recording on Sunday, so we'll be recapping everything with the exception of the South Carolina game. We're going to have hopefully that pod up by like 1 or 2 on Sunday afternoon for everybody on YouTube as well. So please leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ Guerra, at Coast of Heart. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.